City Council on Tuesday, February the 6th at 7 p.m. Please rise for the invocation given by Councilwoman Mrs. Lucido and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear God, we are grateful for the many blessings you bestow upon us. We are especially thankful for all of the amazing citizens we have in the city who volunteer their time for the betterment of our community. Please continue to watch over all of these wonderful people and all of our residents. It is in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Here.
Councilmember Lucido?
Here.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Here.
Councilmember Owens?
Here.
Mayor Pixley?
Here. Were there any other items that wanted to be added to the agenda tonight? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Support.
Move with support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. Our next item is the hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard tonight? Mr. Jakubiak.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, Administration. My name is Walter Kubiak, Eastpointe resident. The reason I'm up here tonight is I want to know why the city is having the right turn lane over in front of Rite Aid removed. In other words, the curb will be brought out to the right through lane. I just recently went to the police department and acquired all of the accidents that happened in the last 10 years. And out of the 7 accidents that I have, 5 of them were pedestrian faults. 2 were the fault of an automobile. Now, none of these accidents took place on that corner. They were all on the other 3. Some of them were actually on 9 Mile. So I'd like to know why that lane's going away. If in fact this was done to protect pedestrians, this was an exercise in futility. No matter, people are going to do whatever they want to do regardless of the safeguards that you put in place. I have learned 2 things in the 74 plus years that I've been here. Number 1, you can't fix stupid, no matter how hard you try. The other, I have a shirt at home with this message on it. If you try and make it idiot-proof, someone will build a better idiot. Now, as far as I'm concerned, getting rid of that lane puts us all at risk for a vehicular accident. Every intersection on both sides of Gratiot from 8 to 16 Mile, there is a right turn lane. Why are we removing ours? That's there for health and safety. I would also like to know who made the final, or I would like to know why the final decision was not made tonight. None of us in the city have had an opportunity to come up and discuss this. And why were you in such a big hurry to get it done? Now, I talked to Spiro Katunis right after the meeting, the last meeting. And he said if the city didn't want to do that, he would change it. So I said to him, I says, okay, I'll go talk to Joe and I'll talk to Randy. And Joe told me that him and Randy could not make that decision. It would have to come from council and mayor. So I said, okay, fine. That's when I went out and got the police reports. So I'm trying to figure out why this was being done. There's no reason to do that. You're already getting rid of the left turn lane on both sides of Gratiot, north and southbound. So that brings 5 lanes down to 4. Now, if you're going to do that corner, why weren't the other 3 done? And I wonder if they're going to do any others all the way up and down Gratiot. Just doesn't make any sense.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. Number one, I would like to know why this was so important. Also, I would like why you didn't wait a few days so we could discuss it here. And how much is it going to cost the city? And I also would like to know if there was any on council that opposed this lane removal. And I hope this council and me are transparent enough to give me the answers that I'm requesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jakubiec. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Sir?
Good evening. My name is Dave Tesh from the Thomas Duke Company. I'm a commercial realtor in the area. Here on behalf of Mr. Leibowitz, Ari Leibowitz, who is a commercial property owner in the city of Eastpointe. The reason I'm here tonight is we have had some complications with Mr. Leibowitz's property in marketing it for sale as it pertains to some of the uses that are allowed under the current zoning ordinance. This property
I'm
is
sorry, could you repeat that last statement?
We've had some complications with the uses that are allowed for the zoning ordinance for this property. Basically, the address is 17650 East 9 Mile Road. It's between Kelly and Gratiot. It used to be a chiropractic building. It had many uses over the years and was once grandfathered to be a live-work situation, meaning that someone could have an apartment on the second floor and run their business, retail office on the first floor. Since the property's changed ownership, that's no longer allowed per the ordinance as it states today. I've talked to Mary Van Heeren here, and we're requesting that it be taken into consideration to change ordinance 50-93, paragraph D, to allow a live-work situation, just because all the people that I've shown this building, probably 20 times, the vast majority have wanted it for that use. And since we can't grant that use per the ordinance, they walk away on the deal, making it very difficult to sell. And really the building is designed and situated for that perfect situation. We both submitted letters, Mr. Leibowitz and myself, to the city council. I'm not really sure if they were received or acknowledged, so that's kind of why we're here tonight. Would it be okay for me to provide the letters to the board?
We received it.
We received it.
Okay, okay,
We're looking into it
Okay.
already. So,
okay,
yeah,
okay. Well, I appreciate it.
no problem.
Yes, you may. Please state your name.
My name is Ari Leibowitz. I reside in Southfield, Michigan. And as indicated previously, I own the property at 17650 East 9 Mile Road. I've been a real estate investor and developer for over 45 years throughout the metropolitan of Tri-County area of Oakland County and Macomb and Wayne. And the opportunity exists here for the city of Eastpointe to be able to bring about an environment where the millennials and the trending that is happening now is to have in the main roads downtown or fringes of the downtown areas to allow for work and live opportunities. This property has been occupied previously by a live and work type of a situation. The particular individual has passed away, and in trying to remarket the property and reposition it and make it a productive asset. We have been finding a lot of difficulty, but a lot of interest in the work-live situation. I have submitted a letter to members of the council on November 27th of 17th. We haven't heard anything, and we come here in person to ask if you would kindly consider this request and look into the ordinance to permit this kind of a use in that particular area, which is really conducive for that type of rezoning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone else wish to be heard at this time? Seeing none, the first hearing of the public is closed. Move on to the approval of the minutes, and we'll start with the special meeting of January 13th, 2018.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the special meeting minutes of January 13th, 2018.
We have move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. The second meeting to be approved would be the regular meeting of January 16th, 2018.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of January 16th, 2018.
Do we have support?
Support.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
The third meeting to have approval of the minutes would be the special meeting of January 18th, 2018.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the special meeting minutes of January 18th, 2018.
Support.
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
We have no scheduled hearings. We have a number of items under unfinished business. The first one, number A, is the adoption of resolution number 1844, which is to waive interest and penalty associated with untimely and not filed property transfer affidavits, Form 2766. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 1844 to waive interest and penalties associated with untimely and not filed property transfer affidavits, Form 2766.
Support.
Move and support it.
And I think,
And this is our assessor in case we have any questions. Is that correct?
Well,
Jeff Edwards.
you had questions last time, Mr. Kleinfeld, or?
yeah, I had to take a look at it because last time we didn't have supporting information, so I'm fine with waiving the fees associated with this.
All right.
Can we go over, yeah, can we,
Can we talk
can you
more
just
about
discuss
it?
those very briefly then, Mr. Edwards?
Sure. My name is Jeff Edwards. I'm the city assessor. Some of you I've met before, some I haven't, so it's nice to finally put names with people.
Can you speak
faces.
directly into
Oh,
the
yeah, sorry.
microphone? Thank you.
The reason why this came about, this resolution, is that back earlier in the summer of 2017, the equalization director, Macomb County, brought this to everybody's attention, all the assessors in the county, that this is going to be one of the things on the AMAR that the state of Michigan is looking at, the State Tax Commission. So what the AMAR is, it's the audit of minimum assessing requirements. And basically, once every 5 years, the State Tax Commission goes through all the counties in the state, and they have a checklist to kind of make sure that the local assessors are doing everything properly by, statute of what they're supposed to be doing. So this happened to be one of the things that's new for this upcoming audit that the state's going to be doing, is that, if there were to be a waiving of the penalties for the property transfer affidavit, that it has to be done through a resolution passed by the city council. So that's really the reason why this became a topic or a resolution that we needed to pass. We're kind of, the Macomb County is not going to receive their AMAR until the year 2021, but we figured we might as well do it now since it does state it in the law, and we kind of want to be proactive in making sure that we're doing everything the way that we're supposed to be doing.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm sorry, I still don't understand why you want us to waive it. Why is that important to waive the interest?
Well, I'm not saying to waive it. I'm saying that if we are to decide to waive it, which has been the policy of the city ever since that I've been here, which has been about 3 years, that it needs to be done so through a resolution. So that's what essentially is what I'm saying, that since we're currently, our policy is not to collect it, then if we're going to keep that policy, then it needs to be, we need to pass a resolution to make sure that, we're following the law.
But even though if it's not collected, it goes with their taxes. I think we were talking about that. So it gets collected.
Well, it can be billed. It can be billed. It's not a lien on the property. And it's not part of the tax levy per se. So if this penalty or this fee was to go delinquent to the county, let's say somebody decided not to pay it, the county can't enforce payment because it's not part of that delinquency or it's not part of the levy. So the county basically, their policy is to just write that off because it like I said, it's not a levy, and they're not gonna chase people down. A lot of times in the situation where somebody has failed to file, it could be a bank or something like that, and they've long moved on and sold the property. So for Macomb County to bill, one of the big banks, in a different state, the likelihood of them paying that is probably small.
So, Mr. Kleinfeld, you had all your questions answered?
Yeah, I had time to look at it. I am curious, though, because you're mentioning it now.
Sure.
And I don't know if this would be something you would come up with or if it would be up to Mr. Blum. Would you be able to run a report and tell us how much?
Well, I actually did take a look at some numbers. It was not challenging, but I would say is a little bit difficult because there's not a report per se you can run in the assessing system. But I can manipulate the data in the back end where I can find out how many people didn't file property transfer affidavits. So I did do a little analysis because I was hoping you would ask. So in the last 6 months, or the last 6 months of the calendar year 2017, from July 1st to December 31st, 2017, there was 841 sales. Not sales, but transactions. I mean, this could be me selling it to somebody else. This could be somebody putting it in their trust. This could be, any sort of transaction. Technically, a property transfer affidavit is required. It doesn't matter if I'm putting it into my estate, trust, whatever. A property transfer affidavit is required by law to be filed. Of those 841 sales, 211 people did not file. Now here's where it gets a little complicated. Of those 211 people who did not file, I looked at the grantor and grantees, and it looked like it was about 34 people who had bought from another person. So these are unrelated parties, what we would call arm's length transaction. So 34 people didn't file. The rest of the people who did not file would be financial institutions to investors, investors to investors, people putting it into trust or people putting it into estates. And those are probably the majority of the people who are going to be the people who don't file, either because they're not aware of it or it's just not a priority for them because, they're an investor, maybe they have intentions of selling it. I don't know, I can't speculate. But the minority seems like it's a person-to-person transaction. And I do know when you do buy a property and you go through the process and you have go through a title company, which is pretty standard procedure nowadays. You get a mortgage and all that other good stuff. A lot of times the title company will make you sign a waiver releasing their liability if you do not file the property transfer. So by law, they have to give you the property transfer in your closing documents, and they put the burden on you to file the paper, and you have to sign a hold harmless, basically saying that if you don't file it, the title company can't be held liable for any reason. So it looks like from the small sample I pulled, like I said, it was only 6 months, but I did want to have something, some numbers, if you would, if the question was asked. So,
Out of those 32 then, who paid the fine and who didn't?
34 people where it looked like it was an arm's length transaction. Still to this day, or up to today's date, those people still have not filed a property transfer. So there are reports we can run. It's not a simple report. You can look at the data, but it takes some manipulation.
Now, the dangerous building that you just had, the last one where it was going from J.P. Morgan to this individual, that'd be the classic example where I assure you J.P. Morgan has never filed a property transfer affidavit. As soon as they sell it to that next individual, we could bill J.P. Morgan all day long. They'll never pay it because it's not, we can't enforce it, and it's not a lien on the property because it's the new guy's property, not the bank's. So that's what we ran into, and I know, Mr. DeMonico, you asked for some information, and I went back and looked. Now, this portion of the law has been around since 1996. It's a direct relationship to the Proposal A, where we started capping properties, and then when you sold it, it uncapped, and it required the property transfer affidavit to allow us to uncap it. We didn't never build this until 2008. In 2008, we billed $6,000. We collected $1,000, wrote off the other $5,000. We did not bill again until, it was fiscal year 12, but 2011, 2012. And there was a retroactive billing that went on there. We billed $79,000, collected a little over $16,000, and wrote off over $62,000 as uncollectible. So we did collect some money, but the time and effort that went into the billing, trying to get it collected, writing it off, and all the activity that went around that, and again, that was about a 2.5 year billing cycle, if you will, that $78,000. We would, based on his numbers, actually we billed everybody, which we would have to, including little old granny moving her house into a trust and not filing. We could theoretically be billing $40,000 if you went with your $200 number or 200 parcel number. But again, as the transfers happen, we have to just write it off. We can attempt to put it on the taxes if it's the same owner. They bought it, they didn't file. We send them a bill. They don't get rid of the property. And that's where most of this money did come from, as we rolled it delinquent onto taxes. But it was only if it was the same owner who failed to file and they still own the property at the time it went delinquent. So what we had looked at was, personally from an Eastpointe standpoint, we just didn't have the staff to add an extra billing burden on. And we also, why don't you talk about the ones that do and don't bill around?
Yeah, when the county originally brought this up, they actually asked all the communities in Macomb County, the 24 communities that we have, and 18 of the 24 do not bill the penalty. There's only 6, and they're New Baltimore, St. Clair Shores, Armada, Chesterfield, Clinton Township, and Harrison Township. Armada Township and New Baltimore are fairly small communities, but your big communities, Warren, Sterling Heights, Shelby Township, Macomb Township, they're not billing these, so.
So I'm just wondering, trying to think out of the box here, if there's a different solution to, because, I don't want the city to be spending all kinds of time and not getting in, any return on investment, essentially. But if I can just, I'm trying to understand this. So this first property, actually, we had today, the Ash property, was one that's owned by, we were mentioning again, J.P. Morgan Chase. And it was a couple of years went by before we, let's see, so in 2014, yeah, so in 2014, it went from JP Morgan Chase to HUD. But we didn't know until, what was it, within the last few months that it was sold in 2014. Our city administration went through all kinds of, trouble putting a packet together, and we just tabled it today, and it could be cleared up. I figure this fee is a good way to get a few bucks back from all that time I would call wasted at this point, since we simply didn't know that it switched and we're sending stuff to people that don't even own the property anymore. Is there a way, though, I know we can't have it as a lien, but I'm just wondering from what I said last time, I'm pretty sure if probably the right bill goes to HUD or something, they're paying it, they're not gonna just,
No, HUD refuses to pay those. HUD and Fannie Mae,
Okay.
they will not pay that PTA because they're the federal government and they don't have to. I mean, that really is their attitude.
Okay.
So they flat out refuse. The big banks know the game because they're out of state, and again, it's not a lien, so we can't get them to collect. I mean, it would cost us 3 times as much of Rich's time to try to do a collection action on the $200.
Sure, I get that. So then what if, so if I was the one that bought it instead of HUD, I just pay my mortgage where there's an escrow, and if my escrow needs to change, they just change my mortgage payment, and would it get paid that way? It's not technically a lien, but my escrow, which, I don't know if some of these would just happen if we just bill differently, would we get some of this money?
And that's where most of that collection that did happen, it came through as we put it on the taxes as delinquent. The mortgage company paid it. We got some money. We got very few instances where somebody actually wrote a check and mailed it in. People just ignore that one. And, we even talked today about if you put it into a trust, that's technically a transfer of ownership. And most trusts don't realize they need to file that paperwork. So, again, we could bill it, we could roll it on to taxes, but it's not the big banks who are the culprits, the major culprits that are going to be paying it. It's going to be the locals.
And then, so if we do the waiver, we just won't even bill, or we'll bill and just not worry after that?
No, we won't bill at all, which we haven't billed since February of 2012, just because the collection ratio is so low, it wasn't worth the effort. We weren't aware of the resolution to waive that until just recently, and that's why it's coming before council now.
Oh, so wait, then in the last 6 months, then, when I asked who paid, nobody was sent a bill, though?
We have not billed anything
Okay.
since February of 2012.
I did consider the idea of, and I'm wondering what council would think on this, of putting a time frame on the resolution to maybe 2020 or something, like revisit it every 5 years. I do think we have to waive penalties up until now, because I don't want to send bills out to someone from 7 years ago. They didn't file a piece of paper. Because I thought my issue when it first came up was we clearly see it with show cause hearings. The problem is, by the time we bill it, we already know that someone has transferred the property. The problem we run into is we don't know it yet. So
Right.
I don't think it really kind of fixes that problem that we're facing. But I have one question in regards to, I know that it can't be a lien on the property, and it can be costly to go through billing or to go through actions to collect. Can we sell to a company like our debt and say we have 200 people that owe $200 and they give us like some sort of percentage? Are we allowed to do that as a government entity? I'm asking because if we don't want to go through the rigmarole of collecting in the future, but
You mean like sell it to like a collection agency?
yeah, the way you do with federal loans or something like that.
How are you
It's
going to
just an
find?
Well, I think I'd be open to what you were saying, Mr. Kleinfeld, with the time limit, because we could address it another time. I feel like this is just like almost feels like a technology issue. If we're just sending a bill, it shouldn't be much of someone's time, maybe in 5 years, or if any state law, or this, what was the AMAR? You said is revisited in
Yeah, the AMAR.
21, I don't know. I think a time limit would be good to look at again in a few years or
Billing is
something.
the issue, it's the collecting.
the collecting. And I don't want to spend money collecting small amounts from individuals. So
Well, we haven't really
What is the
collected in
fee?
for
What
6
is-
years.
What is the fee?
it
Max 200, right?
It maxes out at 200.
200 residential, it's 1,000 on commercial.
But what does it start at?
It's $5 a day with a maximum of 200. Commercial's $20 a day with a maximum of 1,000.
Again, if you found grandma didn't file her trust and she sold the property, put the property into a trust 25 years ago, it would take her whole social security check for the next 4 months.
Yeah.
My concern is having title companies or attorneys prepare stuff, and they're not filing the PTAs, and that's a problem. But I don't know how you can target out,
I established a
those
trust quite some time ago, back in the 90s, and at that time, my attorney was very clear that there was a fee for the transfer of it and to pay that. So I think if you go through the legal proceedings, you find it, but there's a lot of people that establish a trust and transfer within the trust to avoid probate.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a little bit of a snag there.
You also have a lot of the people that do land contracts that don't use a title company for closing, and they're uninformed of the requirement.
Or they're informed and they ignore it.
They may choose to ignore, true.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, Mr. Kleinfeld, supported by Mrs. Lucido. Please call the roll.
Can we?
Or did you
well,
have something else?
Can we just make that, no, I was just gonna say, can we just make that amendment that we,
Revisit
put
it
that
in
time
5
limit on?
years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with doing that because we might, if the way we do assessing ever changes, or if the law ever changes, we can just reaffirm whatever our position is.
If I may, I would suggest if you were going to put a time limit or time frame on the resolution, since we do know for a fact that we will get the audit in 2021, I would recommend, I guess, at least have the resolution effective through that time period. Because, I mean, things happen and you wouldn't want it to slip through the cracks, and then the state tax commission comes in and performs their audit, and that's one of the things that we don't pass on because, it was just an oversight or overlook. So that's just my only recommendation.
So you want to,
Sounds good to me.
I don't want to amend my motion, but if you guys want to make a new motion, I'll rescind my motion, I guess.
Okay.
did you want to change your contract, your motion?
Yeah, I was thinking, because I don't think it's much skin off our teeth to revisit this if we want to decide to collect it. My motion will essentially be the same as before, but I'd like to amend the last therefore to end with Form 2766 is necessary, dash, and this resolution will remain in effect until January 1st, 2022.
Correct.
Do we have support? Mrs. Lucido? Mr. DeMonico?
Support, yeah.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
No.
Councilmember Owens,
No.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item B is the adoption of Resolution 1846. It's the MDOT contract 17553 for the pedestrian refuge island. And as I recall, Mr. Marucci is just suggesting that we table this again.
That's correct, Mayor and Madam members of council. We had the Transportation Improvement Association come out and look at it last week. They forwarded their report to us on Saturday, and this afternoon, or this morning, the deputy police chief and I reviewed it. We both had comments. We're forwarding those back to the Transportation Improvement Association for their clarification. They will be here at the February 20th meeting. You'll have the report then, obviously, in advance of the meeting. So you can take another step towards either approving it or not acting on it. And with respect to the comments that Mr. Jakubiec made with elimination of the northbound right-hand turn lane at 9 Mile and Gratiot, That project is stopped as well because the refuge islands and that small project were all bid as one. And they've identified, the bids have been open for this, so there's identified low bidder. And when I called the State of Michigan Department of Transportation and told them, can we stop this for right now? We have questions. They said, yes, you can. We're not going to award a contract until you sign the agreement. That's when I found out these were actually one contract, two projects, one contract, one bidder. So that project for the right-hand turn lane has been stopped as well. We did not ask, in thinking about it, we did not ask the TIA, the Transportation Improvement Association, to look at the right-hand turn lane. There might be time, if that's your wish, to revisit that, to ask them to come in and look at that. The only information I was able to obtain from the Michigan Department of Transportation is that in 2012, the city asked for the right-hand turn lane to be eliminated. I couldn't find any documentation of that, but I'm going to believe my contact person with MDOT that was the case.
I recall talking about that last meeting. I thought we were just talking about the two middle.
I believe it was in the master plan from 2010, and the master plan had been approved. There were multiple community meetings related to the master plan in the central business district. And I believe it had been approved, like some of the initial planning was in 2008, 2009. And I think the approval of that by council was 2010 in the master plan.
The cost, we don't participate, as you know, the grant was received for the refuge islands. With respect to the elimination of the right-hand turn lane, the cost is either $2,000 or $2,500 for our participation. And that would be to move the curb out and put concrete in front of the brick pavers.
As you know, it takes a long time for MDOT. So it's only taken 8 years for them to come forward with that.
So
But
when then did we approve that? I think I'm confused as to.
Well, it was on our, I believe we had two separate items. One was the islands, and then I think it was called elimination of auxiliary lanes.
Yeah,
is what it's technically
But
called.
they're two different projects, 8 years apart.
So it doesn't say turn lane in any of the, I don't think in any of the.
No, and again, it's tied in with, remember the elimination of the left-hand turn lane, the deacceleration lane? This one was tied, those
That's
two.
where we missed it. I believe it was the same thing. We just discussed the left-hand turn lanes. We never actually discussed the right-hand turn lane, even though it was in that same bid.
I thought Mr. Jakubiec brought it up under resident comments or so at the last meeting. That's how it came, like, why are you eliminating it? And he had come up to the podium and spoken about it.
If you go back to the 2008 master plan discussion, especially for the CBD, there was some discussion at the time that they wanted to reduce the amount of traffic and speed at those particular corners. So there was even talking of putting a bike lane in on the right-hand lane along Gratiot, and that's where the reduction of that lane at that particular point came from. That was going to be the construction that MDOT was going to do.
Well, if we're tabling this, I'll review it before next review but Ms. Lucido or Mr. Kleinfeld, you're saying that was part of the middle.
I believe it was in
Lane.
the same one, if I'm not mistaken, as with the left-hand turn
Okay.
lane.
It was.
I will
I had to look at that too.
review that then.
We have no financial participation with the elimination of left-hand turn lanes, only with the elimination of the right-hand turn lane.
It was just submitted to MDOT so long ago, and they just finally got around to doing it.
Exactly.
I do think, sir, I don't think we specifically talked about the right-hand turn lanes. I think it was in there. I mean, we had a hard time following the conversation of trying to figure out where the
We had a
reduction
hard-
was, so.
We had a hard time trying to figure out why all of a sudden MDOT was coming along with it.
Right, yeah, we discussed, like I said, I remember discussing it, but the RAND was never actually brought up here. That's why I think it was a shock to all of us, because we were all confused on exactly what was being eliminated. Leaving there, I thought it was just the left side also.
I thought that's all we talked about was the left lane, but I don't remember
All right, so we need a motion.
Well, I'll motion then to table until next meeting, resolution number 1846.
Support?
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. Item C is the 2018 CDBG allocations. We have someone who's come up with a plan?
I did, Madam Mayor, if, actually, if I could pass out my notes real quick here. Just a suggestion to start with, as we've done in the past, where we have in the, since I've been on council, given funds to the different organizations that have requested them and not put it all towards just the concrete project. Previously, we've given a little bit more to the organizations that took time out of their day to come to our meeting. So I had just suggested in my document essentially just 2 different levels. You'll see Care House and Turning Point I put as the higher level because they came for $2,500. And then there were 2 other organizations that came also, but they only requested $1,200 and $1,000. So I've put fully funding of theirs. And then the Macomb County Warming Center and McRest, I have $1,500. Which I guess then should change probably Macomb Homeless Coalition maybe to $1,381 instead of $1,000. So it'd be closer to the other 2 organizations that also didn't come. Open to any suggestions. I figured that'd just be a good place to start.
So we have a deficit of 8,000.
Oh, no, that's actually, we'd have still 8,000 more we could give to the organizations. In the left column, I have they've requested 30,500 altogether. We can only give out 20,000. So that's it. So then my suggestion was to give 11,200, which leaves us 8,800 in room. If you want to tack on some additional funds to any of the organizations, I'd definitely be open to that.
I would like to see a little bit more given to McCrest since they do 2 weeks in the city.
Okay.
So they really, and I,
Okay. How much are you thinking?
it doesn't make, and the food bank, Lighthouse, we do, even though they get United Way funding, they do a lot of charity work for Eastpointe residents. Very often I'll get a request and I send people up to the Lighthouse. Very often they will pay utility bills. So it does help.
Oh, this one I had in here for the rest of the audience, if you're following along. I had 0 for Detroit Rescue Mission Ministry, Lighthouse Food Bank, Helping Hand Gifts, and Interfaith Volunteer Caregivers because it said for the food bank that their funds were returned in 2016 in the notes because no Eastpointe residents were part of the program.
Well, they I know they didn't come to the meeting, they've never come to the meeting, but they've shifted people that manage it now. So
Okay.
if they're saying that no Eastpointe residents are coming, they may be just focusing on people that call in from the metropolitan Detroit region.
Okay.
So,
And then for the other 2, it just said they hadn't even spent their 2017 funds yet. So I figured if they hadn't spent those yet, probably shouldn't add on to that. But, of course, that was just a place to start at.
Where did you find the information that they had not spent that yet?
It said in our packet.
It was in our old packet.
I
Oh,
thought it said that the information wasn't available yet unless I was looking at something different.
Let's see. Oh, it says, or Helping Hands Gift has not yet spent funds or completed a grant cycle. And then, information's not yet available on how many people from each community were served.
probably one of the groups that receives, that does not receive money from us, and I do not understand why, but who provides so much support for our local residents, particularly paying utility bills and helping people with food and household management, is St. Vincent de Paul, that covers all of Eastpointe, all of the churches in Eastpointe. And the only St. Vincent de Paul that was listed in our group was another church that was located in another area. So I did put in a call to see if it was possible that we could designate the funds to St. Vincent de Paul it's based in St. Basil, but it covers all of Eastpointe. And I never did get a reply from it.
So,
But
Mr.
I'm wondering if we can still do that and designate that it be given to the group in Eastpointe.
I'm not entirely sure how that works. When we designate the funds, it doesn't even go to us first, does it?
Oh, no,
The
it goes to
county
the county.
administers.
The
So
county disperses it.
I feel
But
like it would be up to.
I asked your mother at one of the meetings, and I don't know whether she ever found, she was going to a meeting the following day.
Oh, I don't know.
So Linda, do you know?
The ones that, the listing that you have of who's requesting funds comes directly from the county.
But
St. Vincent de Paul is not requesting any funds from us.
St. Vincent de Paul is, but not St. Vincent de Paul, St. Basil.
Right, well, yeah, the St. Vincent de Paul isn't on our list of requests.
Okay.
And that's right from the county, and they all meet with the county, all of the groups meet with the county prior to us getting this listing, telling us what cities they want the funds from and what amount.
Well, if we have a residual, I'd like to see more money given to Turning Point or Care House.
Okay. All right, we have 8,800 to work with.
Well, with the McCrest, I thought all the money should be given to them because they helped shelter 63 people. That's a lot of people. And doing some volunteering during the cold weather, seeing a lot of people at the churches and helping to feed them, that's really something that's important that I saw firsthand. And 63 people from, in Eastpointe, that's a lot of people to shelter, plus children, possibly. And so $5,355 is not a lot because they spent actually more than that. If you multiply 63 times $9 a night for 14 days or a month or so, that's really pennies to serving people. So
You have two different groups that work at 4 different churches in the city of Eastpointe.
right.
So the Warming Center does 1 church, and McCrest does 3 churches.
Right. Well, I want to prove all of it for each one of them, actually. Anything that has to do with sheltering somebody with a home and food, I approve that.
We could increase both of them.
Well, I gave them what they asked for. Eastpointe, they only asked for $1,500, so I just approved that. In the Macomb County Shelter, they asked for $5,355. I just approved it. I didn't give them more or less because that's what they asked for. In the Turning Point, I do agree that they should. I only gave them they helped 8 people in Eastpointe, so 9 times $25 a night, and who knows how long they stayed there. Asking for $5,000 is they actually paid more money for people in Eastpointe than $5,000. So if you do the math, they're spending probably $10,000-$20,000 to feed and shelter people.
Okay.
And so, wigs for kids, they wanted 1,000. I thought 500 because I think they asked for some last year and they didn't use the money. So I just gave them half of what they asked for, just in case.
I think it's 1,000 per kid.
It's 1,000 per kid.
It covers one full kid, I believe. I think is why they asked for
okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago they didn't use it the one time, where does it go back? Linda, does it go back to, if it's not used for that specific organization? I thought I read that somewhere, but I can't recall.
I think it goes to the.
They don't use it, it goes back to the county, not to us.
Right.
And then the county has to spend it, or HUD takes it away.
Do they spend it on that,
That one they picked.
the senior
I believe.
chore? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's still a good program, just not the
So Sarah,
program that
you've
we.
been really quiet.
Well, no, I like all your guys' suggestions. I'm fine with increasing the MCREST, because they do a lot with our residents in the city. I'm also more than happy to increase Care House and Turning Point.
And what happened to CARE? Was CARE not included?
Care house, care? I think-
No, CARE. They may not have, maybe they just get their money directly from the county now.
We gave Care House $1,200 last time, and they asked them for $7,000 this year. I just thought we should just double what we gave them last year to $2,400 instead of $7,200. What they did, they helped 3 families in Eastpointe, so that's $300, and they used $600 per person, pretty much, per family. So they spent about $1,800, so probably a little bit more, but with the math, $1,800, so I thought $2,400.
Okay. All right, so then, how about number 2 then? Why don't we just go through them real quick?
I said no, because they didn't use the funds.
Did they not use the fund, or,
It was returned, so.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know about last year. I think it sounds like they just have the
They were probably so
results
busy. And, you know,
of 2
if
years
you,
ago.
if you go in there, that is one of the busiest places of all, and it is amazing how many people they feed. But perhaps they were just too busy to file a report. Who knows?
What about number 3 then?
I agree with you, no.
Number 4?
No.
All right, 5.
I'd like to see just increases in the remaining.
Okay. Well, so 5, then we'll keep it 1,500 because that's the max we can
Well, 5.
allocate.
But McCrest, you could increase.
All right, so if we,
McCrest, I want to give
5,000?
them, I was gonna give them all of it. What's another
Let's see.
$355?
I think we might have enough, I think we've got enough room to give the rest the maximum, I think. Let's do some math here.
Well, you could also.
What did we do for McCrest last year?
You could also increase Turning Point.
Turning Point might be another one that would be worth increasing too. If we give 5,000 to Crest and then 5,000 to Turning Point, I think that'll bring us pretty close to where we're at.
Well, if we do the figures that I came up with the whole, paying the whole thing, we have spent a total of $17,836.
And that's for which ones?
That's the total amount if we give, that I added up together.
For,
Yeah.
for one,
For not one,
for Care House?
for Turning Point, they wanted 5. If we gave them $5,000, the whole thing.
Okay.
2,400 for Care House, yeah.
Was it Care House?
2,400 we approve for Care House?
You have 25.
No, that's what Monique just said. With her number, yeah, I just added that up. It's 17,836 for 2,400 for Care House, 1,500 for the Warming Center, 5,355 for McRest, the maximum, 1,200 for the Literacy Partners, 5,000 for Turning Point, 1,000 for Wigs for Kids, and then the full amount, 1,381 for Macomb Homeless Coalition. If we use those numbers, it comes in less than, we still have room.
Yeah.
So we could even allocate more to Care House if someone wanted to do that. Otherwise, we're giving the full amount to every other organization.
Well, I'm thinking if Mayor said something about the Detroit Rescue Mission, she has seen their work personally. Did you think we should give some to them?
We could always do 1,000 to them, but I think that's what she suggested before, was 1,000 to Lighthouse, so.
Okay.
I mean, I do agree, Lighthouse, it's always busy, the one over there in Roseville, so.
Oh, it
I mean-
truly is.
Right, yeah.
You wanted to give them 1,000?
Yeah. Because they didn't use the funds last year, I think that 1,000 would be fine.
I would rather keep it low, like 500, because if someone's not, even if it's just not reporting and it's just going back up to the county, then that's money we're not using on our roads. So,
Yeah.
you know, if someone doesn't, and if they use it next year and it gets allocated correctly, then I would climb back up the following year.
Well, it says funds returned in 2016. It didn't say 2017, though. So maybe
I
that
don't
was
think we
just too
know yet.
early. Okay.
The county, I don't think can provide us with that information until the end of the grant cycle.
I just can't believe that they would return funds because they didn't use it. Unless they got this big check from United Way and they didn't need it. I find that doubtful.
All right, so 500 or 1,000 then.
Well, you said they help pay for people if they don't have their.
Yeah, we direct anyone. Somebody calls me and says, I just can't pay the water bill, and, you know, they're exhausted, or I can't pay my electric bill or something. So we direct them over there, and they will pay the utility and work with them to establish a budget. That's the same thing that St. Vincent de Paul does. So I just can't, I mean, and St. Vincent de Paul is just always looking for funding, so.
Well, I think 1,000 should be good. I have actually a friend that lives in Eastpointe. He's a senior, and he can't pay his bills, and it's someone he hasn't, it's the church that helps him pay his heating bill, because if he didn't have that, he wouldn't have heat this winter. So I think $1,000 to help someone be able to stay warm and get fed is reasonable.
Well, and the reason why I like the lighthouse more than anything is because they really examine, and they have a system where they check to see that people are not going from charity to charity to charity. So they work really closely, and they have also food that they give on a weekly basis, so they work really well. Okay, what's the final numbers?
So, was it 500 or 1,000? 1,000 then, or should we
I'm
just
in
do a
favor
quick
of
straw?
500, but I think it sounds like more people might want to do 1,000. So
1,000.
All right. So with that, then it comes to 18,836. So we still have, you know, we can stop there. Of course, we don't
Yeah,
have to.
put the rest towards the road.
But it is underneath. Yeah, it's underneath our amount. So
Okay. So do you want to give the final figures so Linda has them?
sure, I'll. Should I throw it in motion form while I'm at it? All right. So I will then, Madam Mayor. I don't know what the leftover amount's going to be. I guess I'd have to do that math. But I'll motion to allocate the fiscal year 2018 Community Development Block Grant funds as follows. $14,800 for the MCCSA Senior Home Chore Program. $2,400 to Care House.
Wait, and there also the street reconstruction project.
Well, that amount will have to be reduced by the amount, this total amount, so that 18,836. So I gotta do the math on that real quick then. You know, it's not the 124 anymore, because we're giving 18 to the charities. Well, I'll do that math real quick here.
But there's a difference from the 20,000 to the 18,000. That needs to be added to the reconstruction, correct?
if you want to,
It's 105,887, right? Yep.
We can do it later. Just give us the figures.
I've got it, yeah. So 2,400 for Care House again, 1,000 for Detroit Rescue Mission Ministries Lighthouse Food Bank, 1,500 for Macomb County Warming Center, 5,355 for McRest, Macomb County Rotating Emergency Shelter Team, 1,200 for Macomb Literacy Partners, 5,000 for Turning Point, 1,000 for Wigs for Kids of Michigan, 1,381 for Macomb Homeless Coalition, which would leave $105,887 for us to reconstruct Johnston from 10 Mile to Haas.
support.
Carrie, go back through that.
Sure.
Because if it comes to less money than the 20,000 that you said was available,
You want to add on to one of them?
the streets, right?
Oh, yeah, the rest of that would,
We already put it on to the
The
reconstruction.
rest goes on to the streets.
Johnston
Yep.
from 10 Mile to Haas.
Okay. All right, move and supported. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
All right, let's move on to reports from administration. We'll start with Acting City Manager, Mr. Marucci.
A couple items, Madam Mayor, members of council. One is, I spoke to the school superintendent's assistant today, and she mentioned a project that sounds exciting. It's in very preliminary stages, but Gleaners Food Bank has a food truck that they're thinking about bringing to town. They need a partner, and that partner would be the city of Eastpointe. And they would bring it in potentially 1 or 2 times a week, and it would go to parks. It's meant only to feed children between the ages of birth and 18 years of age. So she mentioned it today. We're just exploring it. We're going to find out if we can do it by ordinance or whatever the case may be, but pretty exciting. In addition to the, I think it's once a month Thursday that they do at the school. This would be summer only, to get kids into the playgrounds and out from the houses and behind computers. Reminder, the capital improvements workshop is a week from tomorrow night at 7 o'clock here.
So it's still our Valentine's Day date.
Still your Valentine's Day, yes. Your date is here in this building. I'm sorry, Linda, 6 o'clock. So it'll be a long date since we're starting at 6 o'clock here. Thank you, Linda. I've reached out to Roseville and St. Clair Shores with respect to the BSNA training. Roseville said they were not interested, have not received a response to 2 shout-outs to St. Clair Shores. Do you wish to go ahead and schedule the training session for a Friday? And I can get you some suggested dates. That was the preferred day of the week.
I think I'd like to move forward with trying to get dates, still a little kind of far out. Perhaps I could go to a St. Clair Shores or Roseville meeting and just speak at the hearing of the public to say, we're doing this, would you like to join? So, because I think I think BSNA also might need time to develop what they're actually going to present to us, so.
I think so. I think we ought to have them prepare an agenda and bring it back for your approval and length of time and so forth. So
The one thing with St. Clair Shores is they do not use BSNA for their general ledger, so they wouldn't be interested in any training on it. They only
Wasn't
use
aware of that.
taxes and assessing.
Okay.
So it would be Roseville only as far
Right.
as partner.
So do you want me to make some suggestions this Friday for 6 to 8 weeks from now? Okay.
Yeah, I'd just request not Thursday for work commitment.
I thought we had pretty much agreed on a Friday
Okay. Yeah,
because
just
of
one.
being closed here.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do so. And with respect to the right-hand turn lane, we are proceeding on that at 9 Mile and Gratiot in terms of it's going to be narrowed / eliminated, correct?
Well, we,
I think that's something we should discuss next week when we discuss the refuge island.
Then I will ask him to try to prepare something for that as well. I just want to make sure we don't overlook it or approve it by not taking any action. I will take care of it. Okay, that's all I have.
Related to that, is there a timeline we have to get that approved by, or we risk losing the funding tied to it?
Nothing was mentioned, but I told them we would move as quickly as possible, and that's why we reached out to the TIA the day after the meeting and to MDOT to let them know, please don't do anything. They said, believe me, we won't until you sign a contract. So I think we're dealing with it as quickly as possible.
sounds like it's already been 6 years or so, right?
Well, yes, but remember the refuge islands are the other half.
No, I know.
Yes, I know. It's been at least 6 years.
10.
I did also want to bring up, I'm not sure if you got any response from council members on potential shadow dates. Mayor Pixley responded to me, but I know that administration really has to set everything up.
I have not gotten any.
Oh, I'll check then. Maybe I left you out on the email.
I recall I didn't receive an email.
Oh, okay. There's some. I'll send that after the meeting. Then we have some potential dates. Rich, I think you said Wednesdays are the busy day for court.
Yeah, Wednesday's a good day to be over there at the district court. Students would learn a lot and see a lot.
Okay. My suggestion in the email was Rich had already expressed he'd be happy to have someone follow him, and perhaps somebody in the city manager's office, and maybe one person for police and one person for fire. Obviously, that'll be up to you if you want to make personnel available to do that. So.
Anything else?
I'll get a date to you sometime.
All right, let's move on to the finance director.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council. I did hand out a packet. I'm going to run through some of the financials. This is something I would have done during or when the auditors were here presenting the audit. I just wanted to highlight different areas of last year's finances before we roll into the budgeting process. I always like to start at the back. You go to the front, and the government-wide financial statements are everything mushed together, and they're they're kind of meaningless when you compare it to budget. So I'm actually starting at the very back. We've got page 94. The first two items are things that you actually never want to see in a financial report, which is a fund deficit. On page 94, we've got the CDBG, and it has a $114,000 deficit. That is purely an accounting. Yeah,
Sorry,
my first page.
Your first, yeah.
They should all be in the right order, I hope.
No, when you were saying last page, though, I was looking at the last
Oh,
page.
I'm sorry, last page of the comprehensive annual financial report. Yeah, my first page. Sorry. That deficit was created by the county not remitting the funds to us until November, and we're required to defer that revenue. So it's not a true deficit. I don't have to do a deficit elimination plan for the Treasury on that particular one. The next one was the street lighting special assessment. Now, this was a 3-year assessment with some upfront capital. When it was originally presented to council for approval in the fall of 16, we had been projecting a $75,000 deficit for this fiscal year. We revised the budget down to a $55,000 deficit and actually ended up the year with only a $30,000 deficit. This is a corrective action plan that has to go to Treasury, which is later in the agenda. It's just a requirement that we have to go back and tell them how we're going to fix this problem and fix it by keep on doing what we said we were going to do originally. But they just have to have it formalized by council.
Yep. One question. It looked like, I think our electric bill was 50,000 lower than we had budgeted for the year.
Yes.
Right?
The electric bill has been significantly lower than anticipated once we did the final conversion with the library lights. And then our capital has been lower because we did not have to spend as much. We were able to actually identify excess lights or odd location lights and physically move them to new locations that needed it rather than installing brand new lights. So it cut down on our capital cost. If the electric bill continues the trend the way it is, we will probably be, for next year, reducing the street lighting assessment because we cannot assess more than we need. So that next year's $31.18 will probably be lower than that. I can't guarantee it, but it looks like that's how it's trending. The next page has to do with variances on expenditures, and again, we're not authorized to spend more than has been budgeted. On that particular page, you'll see general government, a bond refunding, building authority, all of those have some overspending. That was all related to the debt refinancing that originally had been expected to be recorded in the citywide statements only, but as we got around to finalizing the audit, determined it needed to be recorded within the general fund itself. So 3 of the 4 overspendings are related to the bond financing, and then $4, Treasury is going to forgive us for that. That was just closing out a particular fund, and there was $4 interest that had to be cleaned out at the same time. So again, no big deal from a Treasury standpoint. Next page is the death benefit. This one I want to highlight. We provide a retiree death benefit. The last time we had an actuary done on this, we were 108% funded. You'll see at the bottom, we are currently 221% funded. This is a closed benefit, and the return on our investments have been doing a phenomenal job. Not to be morbid, but every retiree could die tomorrow and we'd have enough money to pay them all off and still have money left over. So this is an unusual circumstance to be that well funded.
So you want to leave, do we just leave it in there because we get more interest in that?
We can invest it in better earnings while it's in this particular fund than if we brought it back. And the other thing I would point out is recent as 2002, our pension fund was 136% funded, and we'll get to that in just a second. So the next page is the OPEB, or the retiree health care. We had an actuary done again this year, and we have $8.2 million in investments. We do have a $39.7 million unfunded liability, but we are 17.2% funded, which I've said before, it would be 17.2% more than a lot of cities. So we're actually making a lot of progress in this particular area. Very happy with that. The next page is the pension. You'll see that we have a $43.6 million unfunded liability, and we are only 48% funded. The total unfunding for retirees between the health care and the pension comes to $83 million of unfunded liability. So that will be a constant strain as the contributions continue to climb. One of the reasons the percentages continue to drop is the length of time that they're allowing us to fund it now that we're in MERS is shrinking by 1 year every year. So we started off at 27 years. We're now down to 24 years, and that will drop every year by 1. As long as the market does good, that won't be a problem. If we have another 2008, of course, we got big problems. But you'll also see, probably not on this page. Nope. I was going to say the contributions have continued to climb, the required contributions for the pension. So that will be continued constraint on our spending. The next page is one I prepared. I've done this before. It shows the infrastructure spending. It's got a 10-year look back, and then I break it down between what we spent in the last 5 years and what we spent in the last 10. In the last 5 years, we've spent $42.7 million on infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, water main, sewers, and then our portion of the county drain. You'll see that we have cut back significantly on the water sewer side as the funds have become tight. The only project that's going on this year is finalizing the Greenbrier pump station and then some ongoing finalization for the, I guess it's the SAW grant activity. I was going to say SRF, but it's actually the SAW grant. There's still some sewer pipe activity going on there. The next page is local streets. This will be why administration always recommends that all of our CDBG money goes into concrete. We canceled projects or delayed projects last fiscal year because we had ended last year with only $1,700 fund balance in local streets. By stopping those projects and a little bit extra money out of the state, we got about $85,000 additional with the new road funding. We ended the year with $228,000 in fund balance. The two projects that we had originally been looking at were, I think it was Roxanne and Johnson here. We were looking at doing Johnston for $278,000, which would have thrown us into a deficit, and the other one was Roxanne, which had come in at $511,000, which would have thrown us into an even bigger deficit. But that was why we had to delay those projects, is there just isn't any money in local streets. We do have enough to do our portion of this year's CDBG project, and then we'll kind of wing it from there, because that's probably one of our biggest CIP stumbling blocks is local streets. Major streets is actually in okay shape. We received an extra $200,000 in major streets from the new state funding. This ending balance, though, does not reflect our portion of Topher. We get billed when the project is complete, so that came through after the fiscal year end. And I want to say it was about $220,000, but don't quote me on that. Next page, it's the proprietary funds, which is a combination of the two that are deemed enterprise funds, water, sewer, and the rubbish, and then the internal service fund. On the internal service fund, last year I'd said that they had finally become self-sufficient. This year, not so much. We had a significant lack of equipment usage due to a significant lack of workers over at 10 Mile, both vacant positions and then just people on workers' comp leave and everything. If they're not using the equipment, we can't charge the rent. You'll see at the bottom there's an advance from other funds of $181,000. That's money that had to be fronted to the motor pool to make it solvent for the year. And that we're already catching up on that this year as we get more activity going on, but that was the cause of that. On the rubbish fund, we you'll see that we have $1 million of invested money in that fund, which helps offset the disposal authority of a negative 2.1. It depends how you look at it. It's a negative asset or it's a liability, but it reflects future payments that we will have to make. If they ever resolve the MDEQ fine, that may resolve itself. But for right now, we've got about half of it covered of what we would owe on that, which is a very good thing. Water sewer fund. Now that one is interesting, and I know it's been brought up multiple times by different residents of, hey, we've got $42 million, why are you raising my rates? If you look at the bottom, you'll see that of the $42.7 million of fund balance, $42.6 million is tied up in water mains and sewers. It's stuff that's already been spent and is in the ground being depreciated. In addition to that, we have an asset of the South Macomb Sanitary District of $6.5 million, which is not reflected down in the fund balance, which would actually indicate we have a negative fund balance. And there's some other gyrations. You know, depending on how you look at it, you can make a case that it's about $10 million in the hole. The biggest item, though, that I would point out is the $4,075,000 advanced from other funds. That really is the, let's call it the problem that we're trying to address this year by pulling back on all the capital projects. That was the cash shortfall in that particular fund at the end of the year, and we had to loan money from one fund to the other to cover that because we couldn't have negative cash at year end. The next couple pages have a historical breakdown of our rates, and I know that's been a hot topic, still is. Across the top, you have the historical rates from fiscal year 13 through the current fiscal year. In the middle, you'll see the revenue generated by those rates, and then one is water, the next page is sewer. But in water, we generated in fiscal year 13 $2.1 million in revenue, but it actually cost us almost $2.7 million to operate the system. We had a shortfall in 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 based on the rates that we were being charged, or that we were charging the residents. I then showed what the water rates should have been to cover all of those shortfalls. And you'll see that when I kept saying we were playing catch up, it was getting the rates up to where they needed to be to cover the cost of the system. What this year's rates do is just get it so we don't spend more than we're taking in. It does not cover any of the prior year's shortfalls. So you need to keep that in mind also. The next page shows the same thing for the sewer side. The cost of, or the revenue generated by our rates, the cost of providing the sewage service. We had a little bit of a cushion for a couple of years, then we went into a deficit for 3 years, and this brings us back to where we need to be on the sewer side of life. Again, it was a huge rate increase, fully understand that, but it was a necessary one. What do we got here? Now this general fund. The next page is the general fund. If you look at some of the variances, the charges for service, it came in $174,000 short from budget. That was mainly the deferral of revenues where we billed it, didn't collect it within the 60 days after the end of the fiscal year and had to defer it. Fines and forfeitures, if you remember, we did a mid-year budget amendment and reduced the court fines and forfeiture revenue by $510,000, and they still came in below the amended budget. There's been a significant reduction in the revenues coming in from the court. There's some of it is less tickets, but the majority of it is the ACLU pay or stay lawsuit, where they're working out payment arrangements versus collecting the fees up front. That has significantly harmed the revenue stream. On the expenditure side, you'll see that everybody came in under budget except the general government, which we talked about earlier was related to the debt refinancing. And that just shows that the department heads are still conscious of spending and not overspending, I guess would be a better way to put it. Pension contributions came in overall $329,000 less than we had budgeted. $200,000 of that was in police and $84,000 of that was in the fire budgets. The balance of police and fire coming in under budget was staffing shortfalls. And then transfers came in under budget, and that's because we did not purchase a fire vehicle originally budgeted for. So we did have a good year, but we still have some concerns. The one thing, another chart here is on the state revenue share. And this goes all the way back to 2000, but we actually peaked in 2001 with state revenue share. One of the interesting things that I did, I mean, on page 141, if you care, there's a 10-year schedule, but you really need more than that. If we had just simple inflation since 2001, we would be getting $6.4 million in fiscal year 16 compared to the 3.3 that we did receive. If the statutory portion of state revenue share kept pace with the constitutional portion, which it used to track pretty close, we would actually have gotten 2.9 million in statutory instead of the 810,000 they gave us, and we would have gotten 5,576,000 in revenue share. That also explains why we're suing the state. So,
Are you just saying that, or is that one of the columns in here?
no, that's just some notations
Okay.
I have.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I wasn't
Nope, you're not missing it.
missing it.
So, and then the next page has to do with the court, which I said they have dropping revenues. They also have increasing expenditures. I went back to 2003, which was the last year that we had it as a municipal court, and the court actually brought in $1,127,000 more than they spent. Then they became a district court. Revenues have climbed a little bit, but the expenses have gone up significantly. This year, they ended up only contributing $447,000 net of expenses, and the current fiscal year, the trend is the expenses will be even or the revenue will be even lower than last year's. I'm not sure exactly what the fix is for that, but they are becoming a drain on the city, which is unusual for a court, or for our court anyways. And then the last page is the 5-year budget forecast updated for the 2017 actuals and the 2018 budget. It gives you kind of a bit of a history and some of the projections. As we keep saying, we're trying to get all 20 years out of Samorsa, and this year, by coming in stronger than we had anticipated, buys us a little bit of time. If you've seen any of the older charts, the fund balance, the general fund balance actually peaked at over 13 million just after the 2008 market crash. It had fallen as low as 6.5 million until we got Samorsa put in place. We are projecting to climb back to around 13, 14 million before we start dipping back into those funds. We're confident if we keep the spending constraints in place that we will make the full 20 years. When it first passed, we figured we'd get 15 out of the 20 years, but we may actually be in a position to survive the full 20. But those were kind of the highlights I wanted to bring up of last year's financial activities. So I don't know if you have any questions, or did I bore you?
I have a few things if no one else.
Okay.
The first thing, during our audit, we talked to Plant Moran about this. The county took out a large bond and invested it in order to start funding the OPEB. Making money off the interest, I guess in the long term, it's cheap, it makes more money doing that than just funding it every year. I believe that Plant Moran gave, I don't know if, Joe, you have the information, there was another community that did it that seems to be pretty happy with it. I don't know if you've looked into that at all, but I'd like to explore that because the year's getting shorter and we're at 17 now, so.
Yeah.
I think we explored that when the law changed and allowed that to happen. Oakland County was the first one to do that. And there's a few smaller cities that have been able to do that, but there was some reason when we explored it here that it was going to be very difficult for us to do. I think it related back to the reduction of employees and the contributions.
Well, there was a state law passed where we could have borrowed money from the state to fund our pension shortfall. However, our bond rating was only an A+, and that was not good enough for us to borrow from the state. They had set within the law a minimum bond rating, and we did not meet that. So we could not fund the pension that way. We could bond, a general bond, and then put it into pension or OPEB. We just couldn't use the specific one the state had authorized. There's been discussion on and off for a couple of years about doing that. The only concern is that if you bond it out, put the money in pension or OPEB, wherever you want to put it, and that gets invested, and then 2008 happens again, you now have a bond payment plus you got a shortfall. And now you're making two payments. So it's a matter of how much risk people are willing to tolerate. If we were to bond right now, we could probably get it, I would say 4% would be my guess is what the interest rate would be. Putting it into the pension assumes we're going to get 7.75% return on those funds. This year, last calendar year, I should say, we would have got more than that. Yesterday, we wouldn't. So, it's one of those things, again, it's how much risk you are willing to take on, because there is the potential of having a bond payment plus still having a pension and OPEB payment that has to continue. We've just never been to the point where we were ready to pull the trigger on something like that.
Do you recall, what was the interest rate that they had mentioned with that community, or what is the county's?
I was
I don't
just
know.
generally 4% all across. I think the county got it at a better rate.
Yeah, well, the county has a better bond rating.
It's like 3 or something.
And that's one thing is, your bond rating will drive the interest rate. When we refinanced the bond for this building, we actually got it for 2.75, but it was also a shorter period. So the shorter the period, the lower the rate also. But if, again, we've toyed with the idea on and off of we float a $40 million bond issue, dump it all into pension, and eliminate that unfunded liability. There's still going to be some smaller payments that have to go into the pension for the ongoing active employees, but we won't be paying for all the unfunded portion, which is a large amount of our annual contribution. That being said, you do $40 million over 20 years, and our annual bond payment's probably going to be $2.7 million, roughly. And we're currently contributing a little over $3 million into the pension. So, again, it's a matter of how much risk you want to take on. So we could end up with 2.7 plus another $2 million if the market tanked or something. So.
I'd like to talk about it maybe next time going into budget or something when we're looking at our financials again.
I think the other thing I'd like to look at, just briefly, is the apportionment study that we submitted in 2012, and we brought that back up in the fall of 2017. And we asked to have a meeting scheduled, and there's more bond issues and so forth coming out of that. I think it's mandatory that we address that, because that's a constant.
You're talking about
The
Martin
Public
Road.
Works.
Martin Road.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I hadn't responded to your email yet. I did. I asked about that. I believe Kathy Toko is the one who sits on that board from the commission on the drain board.
It's your mother and one other person. unless they switch.
She sits on 8.5. They might switch. I'm not sure, but
Oh, one might be Martin Road and then the other one might be.
yeah, 8.5. They were under the impression that Miller's office had already taken steps to correct that apportionment. So it sounds like we're still getting.
We're
bills
still
for
getting a
that.
third of that. Actually, I've gotten a bill that I have not paid because it's a third of the operational cost for the Martin Road. We have that station maintenance charge at 33 cents a month per water account, which generates about 13,000 a quarter. They sent us a 6-month bill of over $70,000.
And then there was an increment also for capital improvements in that drain.
We're gonna, once that project is done, we'll be on the hook for 1.5 million in county debt if they don't do the reapportionment.
Now, I know that on Monday, there's a drain board meeting for 8.5, and I think for Martin as well. It might be a good idea for you. I don't know if you've gone to those drain meetings before.
Been to a
He
few.
was at the last meeting with us when we tried to get it discussed, and we asked them to schedule the meeting the
Well,
following
they
month.
agreed they were gonna make the change October 1st, and then they didn't.
Yeah, I
So,
thought they were making the
I
change.
don't know.
I thought they were refusing to do anything retroactively, which I would like to see because we've been paying for it. But
So I think it's necessary that at some time, either wait till the next city manager comes or to get up there and go, and Mr. Pangori went with us the last time, so I think it's important that we do that.
I'm not sure if I can make it on Monday, but if I can, I'll try to go just to reiterate that we're keeping an eye on it.
What time are those meetings?
They start at 10, but the quorum, there are like a bunch of different quorums, so they just go from there. So I think they're normally done by like noon, though.
I thought we started early.
Can you email that information to all of us so one of us might be able to make it?
Sure. I'll send that to you if you feel like going.
I get emails.
All right,
once in a
do
while
you have
from the county
anything
for that,
else?
but yeah. I have nothing, no.
Any other questions?
No.
All right, let's move on to our city attorney, Ms.
Thank you,
Strawberry.
Madam Mayor, members of council. As the council is aware, lawyers from the Department of Justice were in town last week. I attended 9 different depositions over the course of the week. Mr. Brown from my office attended 2 depositions. Some of those depositions took place at the city attorney's office. Some of the depositions took place here at City Hall, and some of the depositions took place at the U.S. Attorney's Office in downtown Detroit. Interestingly, the depositions that took place here at City Hall, there were 3 lawyers from the Department of Justice that attended those depositions, including a lawyer from the U.S. Attorney's Office. So 4 lawyers total for the plaintiff for those depositions. So I thought that was interesting. The only time our office had 2 lawyers was the final deposition where Mr. Brown joined me at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the last deposition last Friday. But what's going to happen next on that case is expert depositions are scheduled for the end of this month. The city has retained 2 experts to assist it in its defense, and the Department of Justice also has 2 experts. Those depositions, 3 of which will likely take place in Washington, D.C., and we are still waiting on the availability of the 4th expert as to where that deposition will take place. But those are scheduled to take place at the end of this month. And then a motion for summary judgment is due with the court on March 19th. What that motion will be asking is that the court review all of the evidence that has been assembled during the course of discovery in this case, and asking that the case be dismissed by the court. I anticipate that the plaintiff in this case will also file a similar motion, but our office has started work on preparation of that motion. And finally, we also intend to travel to Washington, D.C. the week of March 19th. I've been in contact with the Department of Justice, and we requested that we make a, excuse me, a presentation to the department head in Washington, D.C. That request was accepted, and so we're just trying to formalize an actual meeting date. But as it looks right now, based on an email that I received from the attorney from the Department of Justice earlier this morning, that is going to tentatively take place during the week of March 19th. So after our motion for summary judgment is filed that Monday, later in the week, our office will be traveling to Washington DC to make that formal presentation. We've already been instructed that we are limited to 1 hour of the department head's time, but again, that'll take place sometime during that week. I've also submitted our monthly status report for all the cases that we're currently handling. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding that or any other questions that the council may have.
Any questions? All right, let's move on to new business, and we'll start with adoption of resolution number 1848 for the hardship exemption.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to adopt resolution number 1848, which rescinds the City of Eastpointe's previous hardship exemption policy and establishes a new hardship exemption policy and guidelines for the city consistent with state law and the recommendation of the city assessor for use by the Eastpointe Board of Review.
Support.
Who's support? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld.
Yes.
I would assume that Mr. Duchesne's name is going to be changed on this. It's there under the city clerk's certification. Right. Item B is a special land use for the Hollywood Hookah Lounge. Do we have a motion, please?
I think I'd like to have discussion first, and since there's people, it looks like there's.
Sturgis still says that you bring a motion to the table for discussion, and I know that we have witnesses here.
Madam Mayor, I motion to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation to deny the special land use approval requested by the Hollywood Hookah Lounge at 22035 Gratiot Avenue based on failure of the applicant to adequately satisfy criteria under Section 50-49D of the Eastpointe zoning ordinance and require the business to discontinue operation immediately.
And do we have support on that? And then we have discussion before we call the roll.
I'll support for discussion.
Okay. And then we have the opportunity. Would you like to speak?
Certainly. As a matter of introduction, Christopher John Pozios, on behalf of Hollywood Hookah Lounge, recently retained. With that being said, it's my recommendation, and I would ask the council to table this matter for a future discussion, so I can educate myself on some of the issues, address some of the problems and concerns that I know that the city has, and come up with a plan, formulate a plan of action, clear and concise, and sort of convey that to the business owner and make everybody happy and make sure that he's a good corporate citizen within the city of Eastpointe. So that's kindly my request tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
And the lady behind you?
Actually, I'm a real estate consultant, and I represent Mike and
Can you
Nakia.
state your name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Terry Boggio. And I represent Mike and Nakia Najer. They have two properties here, 23005 Gratiot, 24850 Gratiot. The people that you're discussing in Hollywood had contacted us to see about putting their business there and moving it from their current location. So we were very concerned as to some of the issues that you're discussing. So I had a meeting with the owners, and I also had a meeting with Mr. Pozios, and they seem to have a plan. We would not be objectionable in wanting to be good neighbors. My clients currently had, or prior had businesses here. Now they have rentals. So it would depend on the disposition, but we would be open to that discussion, understanding the plans that they do have in process. I just wanted to make that known.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, does anybody have any questions for the two people that came forward?
Now, how long would you need to put that plan together?
30 days should suffice. That way we have sort of time to implement the plan, explain exactly what is needed to correct some of the issues that have been happening at the location, and sort of hire the necessary staffing that would sort of remediate some of the issues that have happened. From my understanding, meetings are held, council meetings are held.
First and third Tuesdays.
That's correct. If we push,
PM every month.
okay, 30 days I think would be good for our purposes, with your approval, of course.
So you're looking at the first week of March, perhaps?
That's correct.
When were you hired by the Hollywood Hookah Lounge?
Yesterday, actually. That's why I sent a letter over to the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Albright?
Okay,
Ma-
yeah,
ma-
you go ahead, sorry.
Madam Mayor, if the council is inclined to table consideration on this request, based on concerns of city administration, I would ask, and I've discussed this with council already, that any current business operations at that site cease immediately. There's to be no business activity based on recent events that have taken place there. And I believe that council is in agreement with that.
We do. I do.
So if there is going to be a consideration for tabling this matter, that part of that motion to table would be that there's a condition expressly stating that no business activity at that location shall continue until this matter is resolved.
Certainly, we're agreeable to that.
Is this, I'm sorry, when does the license currently expire? Because I don't think the date was.
I'm sorry, I don't have,
Sorry, it was in Mary's memo.
there you go.
Yeah, it was in my memo, and the current license issued by the clerk's office expires on June 30th, 2018.
Okay, so, just so I understand your proposition, Rich, us tabling it and not, making a final decision to deny now is in exchange, so they won't use that license to keep practicing, or keep operating right now.
That's correct. I believe that there's a stipulation by the owners and operators that would be acceptable.
But as of today, no, you're not supposed to be open until we see that plan and we agree upon it, if we do or don't, correct? Until
That's my
next
understanding.
meeting, correct? Okay.
And not just as a hookah lounge, just not open, period, right, is what we're
Right.
saying? Okay.
Yes.
How would we do that in a motion? Because can we table with tying that to
Well, I think
something?
the first thing we have to do is take Sarah's motion and take a vote on that, and then come up with a different motion.
Oh, yes.
All right? All right, call the roll on Sarah's motion, please.
Oh.
Well, aren't we, well,
We're
we
not
need,
support.
And then we'll make another motion.
well, we need to not vote on this motion.
Can I just withdraw my support? Because it'll be a
Can I
final
withdraw my
decision if
motion?
we actually make a
You can
vote.
withdraw your motion, you can withdraw your support.
I'll
Okay.
withdraw my motion in regards to Hollywood Hookah Lounge located at 22035 Gratiot Avenue.
You
And
withdraw
I
your
withdraw my
support.
support.
Okay. Now another motion?
Right, are we, was everyone thinking 30 days then, or, I don't know, I
I'm fine
just,
with 30 days, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
30
that's-
days.
As long as they're not operating.
okay, yeah, I get, it just, it's kind of frustrating to me, the planning commission vote was January 4th, so it was like a month ago, but, so,
I think I would prefer that they take their plan back to the planning commission and have them review it again before
Yeah,
it
I think
comes
that's a good
back.
idea. The planning commission can do a lot of the beginning part before it comes back to us.
Is there any reason why they can't go back to the planning commission with a revised plan for activity?
The council could send this matter back to the planning
For
commission.
the first.
With a
meeting.
revised plan,
Yes.
not the same thing, it'd be the revised plan.
and then it,
With the same condition that there's no business operated at that location.
Correct, right.
okay, and then it would just be our next meeting, as opposed
Well,
to,
it would be, the following one
It
after
would be the
that,
first
then.
week
so
of
it'll be a month and a half until we
Yeah.
saw instead of a month, then. Okay, I think, sounds good.
I have a question, Mr. Albright. Would the planning commission need to hold another public hearing on the special use permit?
Defer to Mary on that one. I don't believe so. I think it could just be sent back to the planning commission for further.
Yeah, not knowing what the changes to that plan would be, I don't know if they'd need to do another public notice. I think the public would probably want to know, because they were, concerned and appeared at that initial meeting at Planning Commission.
I think the changes seem substantial at this, and I think people would want to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what those changes are at all, so.
It's
If
possible that may be required.
And if that's the case, it will not be before the March Planning Commission meeting. We don't have time to get that notice in.
So this looks obviously closer to 60 or more.
I'm less concerned about the timeline, knowing that operation will cease until things go forward. So, I understand it'll take time to go through planning. I think there should be another public notice if there's new materials to consider,
Absolutely.
so.
You want to make the motion?
Sure. Like I said, I'm not sure how to tie this to like tabling. I guess I'll make a motion to send the issue regarding the special land use back to, for 22035 Gratiot, back to the Planning Commission for consideration on the condition that operations cease in the meantime, business operations.
With the revised plan.
And then you were saying the next agenda that we can also have another public hearing?
The
Yeah,
public
I
hearing
think
would
that would
be,
just be up to planning or them to schedule that. I don't know if I'd have to put that, I can put that in my motion if you think it's
We mentioned.
more clean, Rich.
Yeah, I would advise that that be included in the motion as well.
Sure. I will include that they need to have a public hearing as well to consider the revised plan.
I'll support.
move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens.
Yes.
All right, so you'll develop a revised plan and you'll be in contact with Ms. Van Haren.
Certainly. Thank you very much.
All right, our next item is the authorization for engineering service to prepare plans, specs, and provide contract administration for the 2018 local street joint sealing program. And Mr. Pangori is here. Do we have a motion? There is none.
Madam Mayor, I motion to engage the services of Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick Incorporation to prepare plans, specifications, and provide contract administration for the 2018 local street joint sealing program. The project will start in the southwest corner of the city and continue east between 8 Mile Road and Topher, along with joint sealing on Evergreen, Samara, and Owen between Gratiot and Hofer, in accordance with the engineer's proposed dated January 34th, 2018, and authorize the acting city manager to execute all necessary documents related to this contract.
Support.
Move with support. Mr. Pangori, any questions for Mr. Pangori?
Well, if you want to give a little intro first.
Sarah did a great job describing the project. I can tell you that several years ago, that was joint sealing of the existing streets were a pretty common occurrence that has not been done in quite a while, probably long overdue. Acting City Manager, Mr. Marucci, had been questioning me for a number of months about getting a program restarted here in the city. I think it's a great idea, and I would fully support it.
I've heard, just FYI, the same thing out of St. Clair Shores with, I think it's Harper falling apart, that if a few years ago, if they had just done some of the sealing or something like that, my understanding is it would have prevented it from the awful condition that it's in now, so.
And you did a similar program in Clawson, you said, Mr. Marucci?
We did a program in Clawson every year, in other cities as well. I mean, we did $100,000 worth of work in Clawson 15 years ago. I mean, that was my requirement. We must do this to save the streets. Especially, you saw the report prepared by the finance director, the amount of money we put in streets. This should be a requirement.
Well, we already do it on the major streets.
You have done a very good job on your major roads. You had a program 2 years ago that did all the major streets. But the local roads have been, that type of preventative maintenance has not occurred in several years.
Every year, we should be putting money into the systems as we do in the road building.
Now, what do we do if roads, I guess, pretty low on the Pacer scale or something, like where, I know we have a few roads where, like, at the bottom of driveways, we just don't do anything if it's,
You can't.
it's just on the roads in decent condition.
That's correct.
This would be for, right? Okay.
Yeah. If it's a large area that needs a patch, you can't joint seal it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be addressed.
Okay.
How long does that last?
The joint sealing, it can last many years, 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
All right. Motion and support, please call the roll.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Could Mr. Marucci please turn on his mic?
I don't vote.
Yeah,
But
but
I
we
will
missed
crit-
your whole discussion.
Okay, item D
It
is
was pretty good.
authorization for the engineering proposal of 2018-19 sewer rehab program from 2015 CCTV area, Lambert to Kelly, Topher to 9, and east of Kelly from 8 Mile to 9 Mile. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to engage the professional services of Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick to prepare engineering plans, specifications, and provide contract administration for the 2018-19 sewer rehabilitation program from 2015 CCTV area, Lambert to Kelly from Topher to 9 Mile, and east of Kelly from 8 Mile to 9 Mile in accordance with the engineer's proposal dated January 30th, 2018, and authorize the acting city manager to execute all necessary documents related to the contract.
Support?
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Wait, can we, let's discuss this one, or, this is a big project.
Is this
Mr.
a
Panko.
continuation of our project previous?
This is an area of the city that was cleaned and videotaped in 2015, and due to financial constraints that year and the following year, the last 2 years, the repairs that were identified then were not completed. So we've been kind of sitting in the wings waiting for there to be sufficient funds in the water and sewer fund in order to do this work. The project would be put together, specs made, bid out, but the work would not start until after July 1st.
Okay, and so some of the area has already been completed, right then, that is mentioned in the motion? Because, so we're talking about, well, first of all, I think the motion has a different area than your memo. Are we doing 8 to 9 or 9 to 10?
It's 8 to 9.
Okay, your memo, oh, okay. I
So-
thought it'd be the opposite.
So yeah, there is a typo under the understanding of the project portion of my letter, where it says 9 to 10, but that should be 8 to 9. The description in the reference is correct, and the
Agenda.
Okay, so the motion just made was correct.
the motion made was correct.
So then so we're doing sewer rehabilitation though? I didn't have time to look at that document, sorry, today. that
No,
you
that's
sent
fine.
us
That's fine.
today.
It's
Yeah.
Didn't have time to read the whole thing, for sure. No.
It is primarily, most of the work is full-length lining. So lining of the sewers from manhole to manhole. That represents about $610,000 worth of the work. And there's about $260,000 in what we call sectional lining repairs, which could be anywhere from 5 feet to 20-foot long sectional liners within the sewer line. And then there's about $200,000 that have been identified for what we call an open cut repair, which is just a traditional excavation the sewer at that location is beyond the point where it can be lined and it has to be dug up to be fixed.
Well, I'm just saying, some of the area though has already been done. Because a couple years ago, I mean, my parents' house is in here, and their sewer, we just put a new liner in on Curtin, which would be in this area. You say Lambrick to.
It's quite possible, Councilman DeMonico, that there would have been isolated areas within there. A lot of times when we do TV and clean a section, the DPW may have a problem sewer that might be out of the area that we're doing. Mm-hmm. And that area that sewer line would get cleaned and televised, and if there's repairs needed, it would be done. But
So would we skip that section?
Yeah, we wouldn't redo it again, for sure.
Okay. Well, so then, do we not know where those projects happen then?
Oh, we do know where they happen, but on all the ones that have been identified in this program have not occurred yet.
I guess what's a more specific map, I guess, because I just want to make sure we're not doing again something that we just did.
We definitely wouldn't do that.
Okay.
So
We wouldn't put a liner on top of a liner. That wouldn't happen.
So if you mapped out a section that was already done, is that correct? You price it based on that section, correct?
No, this is, well, it's priced, it's estimated based on specific review of the videotape of the sewer lines that were taped in 2015.
Oh, I know what your question is. Yeah, we'd be okaying them to put together a bid then. They're just doing the engineering now, and then later we would, what was it, United Resource, for example, was the contractor that did it before. This would come in front of us again then. Okay. And that would have the specific numbers.
That's
right
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I wanted to make sure then too that portion of street wouldn't even be then included.
Right, and
when we
at this
put out
point, I don't necessarily have a map of all the locations.
Mhm.
That's part of the specifications that we'll prepare. I have a spreadsheet that was used to identify the review and analyze and estimate the cost, but I don't have, I can't show you a map of all those locations at this moment.
Okay. Okay.
I had one question related to this. It's less engineering, though. I didn't get a chance to look at the CIP. Do we have this in our CIP for this year?
No, next fiscal year. That's why it's not starting until after July 1st. It'll be in next week's meeting. We'll be talking about the stuff that you're authorizing him to start the engineering on.
That's why I was asking. I was wondering, because we have a meeting coming up, so.
We specifically didn't do anything this year to try to build the funds back up. We will have $4 million per year split between water, sewer, however we decide, but we've had meetings with Mr. Pangori and have the schedule for the next 5 years of what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
You ready to vote? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Item E is the authorization for engineering services for the rehab replacement of critical manholes and catch basins. Do we have a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I motion to engage the professional services of Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick, Inc. to prepare engineering plans, specifications, and provide contract administration for the rehabilitation, replacement of critical manholes and catch basins in accordance with the engineer's proposal dated January 26, 2018, and authorize the acting city manager to execute all necessary documents related to this contract.
Support.
Move and support. Do you have questions related to this? I just have one question. Many of the drains, the county drains, the catch basins that are attached to the county drains are some of them that are crumbling. So, as well as, the manholes, blah, blah, blah. So when the county has no responsibility at all for the catch basins that are attached to their drains?
They do. They definitely do. What we will be doing with this program is working with our survey of all of the catch basins and manholes in the city and with the DPW staff to identify the most critical ones. If they are connected to a county drain, I guess it would depend upon how critical that structure is to be replaced. If it's connected to a county drain, then we have to petition the drain office to put together a project to do the work. And in most cases, they don't have money in that drain fund, and they will end up assessing the city for the cost of the repairs anyways. So we'll need to evaluate that depending upon the number of structures that we find as to whether or not that process is worth
Is it more
investigating.
reasonable for us to do it, or is it more reasonable for the county to do it?
It probably, if we're doing a larger program, like this is a pretty good sized program, it probably would be more feasible for us to include it as part of our program.
The only downside to that is if we do it, it comes out of water sewer. If the county does it, it's part of the Chapter 20 drain debt. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind.
We pay it either way.
But one is a millage, one's part of the water sewer rates, so.
Okay. All right, please call the roll.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item F. These poor men have sat here and waited and waited. This is on the regional AFG radio grant, and I would presume you're probably here to answer questions?
Mr. Folkert, or Deputy Chief Folkert. Deputy Chief Folkert should take the lead on this, since it's our portion of the
Do you
grant.
want to use that microphone there?
Yeah, I got it turned on. This project started about 18 months ago. It was a joint venture between ourselves and our partners in Roseville and St. Clair Shores, with St. Clair Shores taking the lead in the project. The city manager at the time signed off on the project, and we proceeded to go forward with it. What the scope of the project is our current radio system. We got grant funding for that in 2005. The radios were purchased in 2006, went online in 2007. Those radios have reached the end of their useful life. The vendor of the radio, Motorola, after the end of 19 will no longer provide service or parts for those radios. The radios will be fully functional, but as they become not repairable, we'll need to replace them. So knowing that we were going to have this radio problem, we went forward with an AFG grant to secure funding from the federal government. We received that grant in the fall of 17. St. Clair Shores, taking the lead on it, did the request for proposals and the bid process through their council. Basically, ourselves and Roseville would then, just for the grant portion, pay St. Clair Shores for our matching funds, and items that were not funded, we would pay direct to the vendors. We received $62,727.56 from FEMA. Our matching funds that we would pay directly to St. Clair Shores are $9,716.25. If you're curious why that's more than 10%, it actually ends up being about 15.5%. Is that because the federal government's narrow focus on what they think a radio should cost? If you look at, as an example, the cost of one of the handheld radios, which is $2,615.50, FEMA says that is a $2,500 item minus the 10% or $250. Well, if you look at it, it's more than $215, or excuse me, $250 is more like $365.50. So the matching funds in reality are not 90-10, they're about 85-15. The other accessories in the program that you see, the $13,146 are items that are not covered by the grant that we still need to make the radios function. When you look at the federal grant, the handheld radio is just the radio. No extra battery, no charger, no cost to program it, no cost payable to the state of Michigan to operate on the state of Michigan system. Those items are not included in the grant. So those items would be self-funded by the city of Eastpointe. So the $6,727.56 from the federal government, the $9,716.25 is our matching to St. Clair Shores. The $13,146 is the accessories and the fees to the state of Michigan. Those break down to $7,146 in radio equipment and $6,000 payable up front to the state of Michigan to operate the radios on their systems. which the total cost for the city of Eastpointe to the project is $85,589.81, of which we're only responsible for $22,862.25.
Yes. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm going to support this, but I wanted to talk about it. I'm glad to see us work with other communities to do something like go after a grant. I think obviously the most notable advantage is we can get lower prices when we do a RFP on a large sum of things. Looking at the beginning of this grant and the end of this grant, though, I noticed that when not all the funding was given through FEMA, it looked to me like Eastpointe got the largest hit on actual equipment. And the only reason I ended up looking into this was because I did not understand the 10% thing. So I got the information from St. Clair Shores. Now, I know that the other two communities are larger and they would have more, but both of them are getting basically double the amount of grant money for actual equipment. And the original grant proposal, we were about 30% of the ask in that, and then when it got doled out, we were about 17% of what we actually got. And the reason I'm concerned about it is when I looked at that and I saw FEMA kind of like scale where the money goes, when the grant money gets allocated and we're talking about what's going to go where, I wonder if it would have been more beneficial for us to handle the grant on our own in a situation like this.
With the way that they award the grant on the numbers of the radios, we're at a disadvantage basically because we have less vehicles. We would have received the same amount of money. Like the 18 handheld radios, they go 4 for each vehicle. So we have for riding positions. So we have 4 riding positions in the ladder, the engine, and the truck. And then they give you 2 radios for the utility vehicles, my vehicle, the battalion chief's vehicle, and the pickup. That would be regardless if we went and did that on our own or if we did that jointly. St. Clair Shores, they have riding positions because they have multiple vehicles, multiple stations, same with Roseville. Basically, they have more fire trucks to put the equipment in, they get more equipment.
I understand that. When the award comes from FEMA, though, it was up to the communities after that to determine how much grant money went to each community, wasn't it?
No, the grant money itself was divided among those riding positions and vehicles. Where you can probably see some of the extra money is that you won't see in St. Clair Shores or Roseville is the accessories. We're getting almost the same amount of accessories as they are for 3 stations that we are just getting for 1 station. Battery chargers, extra batteries. We have, if you look at the breakdown of the extra equipment, vehicle chargers, we're getting 2. Single chargers, we're getting 2. A multi-bank charger, we're getting 1. I believe St. Clair Shores, they're getting 3 multi-chargers, 1 for each station, but they're still only getting an equal number of single chargers and vehicle chargers. It's just because we only have the 1 station, we kind of get at a disadvantage of the numbers of radios purchased per vehicle versus the amount of stuff we have to use inside the house itself.
Yeah, but my question is that, did that number get determined by FEMA, or did we decide that, the 3 of us, because when you go onto FEMA's website, it just says they got the 364,000 or something.
The numbers of radios and the numbers of headphones, that kind of thing, that was determined by FEMA, by riding positions of the vehicles.
Well, are you asking, we could have still spread the grant money possibly differently, even though we had the same amount of accessories, something like that?
Well, we didn't have the same amount. We were asking for a little bit less in the grant request, which is outlined in the term agreement or expectation letter, whatever it's called. Just what ended up coming out of that was a lot different. And when you go, I did email out St. Clair Shores' documents on their agenda. It's a little bit convoluted, but we also bought disproportionately compared to the other communities, like more batteries and chargers. And the way the whole thing looked to me just seemed like, I think sometimes we all want to work together to make sure everyone gets the most that we can. But, you know, we basically, it looked to me like we were getting more of those kind of assets that helps bring the price down because we're buying more overall. And then when the grant money got cut down in terms of what each city would get, we were the most severely cut on it. And I was just concerned about that because I don't know how the communications between the departments or at Sarisa, you know, kind of occurred surrounding this. But I know that I've seen with some of our other partnerships that sometimes administration doesn't always push back against other cities if they are like fighting for resources. So the reason I wanted to raise it is because it didn't look great the way the breakdown ended up happening. Now that said, we're in a time when Steve Duchesne was leaving, and we also didn't have a director of public safety. So I wasn't even sure if we were a little bit left out of the conversation more than we would have been. But I wanted to raise the issue just because it's something I've been wanting to keep our thumb on because I've seen it happen with other resources. So that's the only reason I wanted to make those comments. I am going to support it, obviously. I want to take advantage of the grant money.
I had one quick question, might be a silly question, but the programming fees for each of these, was it
Correct.
like $250?
per
What
radio,
does that
and
mean?
That's what we have to pay to the state of Michigan for them to put the radio on a thumb drive and then load that radio into the system.
Can I do it? No.
Unfortunately, Lansing gets their money. And not only does Lansing get their money, that has to be payable up front in our check cleared before they will touch our radios.
Yeah,
They
that
will not
just-
bill us.
So it is just a tech, it seems like a very high
That is
cost for that. That's
the
all
state
why I was
technical
asking.
department. They're in charge of the 800 radio system within the state of Michigan. The Macomb County system is part of that system. And yeah, that's an unfortunate part of doing business with the state of Michigan currently.
All right, so maybe it wasn't too silly of a question. Thanks.
No, that, they have really clamped down on how they do it. They used to bill us for it. Now, evidently, they must have some problems. They want their cash up front.
Okay.
I did have one other thing related to this, because I know that this is going to come out of what it was an original line item for a vehicle, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that there was another grant given to St. Clair Shores, but I didn't know that this process was happening. Are we looking at any grants right now for vehicles?
No, we are not.
Okay. I'd like to see I guess this would be between you and Joe Marucci to take a look at, but I think the 12th of this month is when applications open up for FEMA for that.
That's correct.
And I know St. Clair Shores got $630,000 at the end of last year for vehicles, and that's a lot. So I feel like we'd probably be able to get some money for, one or two or something, so.
Sure.
And whether that's together or apart, I don't know. Whatever ends up cheapest and best for us at the end.
Okay, we have a motion. No motion. We just went to discuss. Can we get a motion, please?
Sure, Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve funding for the regional AFG radio grant in the amount of $22,862.25 as described in Deputy Fire Chief Folkert's memorandum dated January 30, 2018.
Support.
Move to support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item G is a special event application for Cruise and Gratiot to be held this year on Saturday, June 16th.
Where's Harvey Curley at? I thought.
Harvey Curley's birthday is today, and he said he was not going to spend time in a council meeting. So
Understandable.
So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about the application or about the cruise itself. You will notice that the application is for the cruise day itself, but the cruise, we did put a schedule of all the different meetings or the car shows, and they're all on the back on the page here. So there's car shows Monday through Saturday. And this year, different. Genesis Chevrolet, which bought Marola Chevrolet, is going to have a big car show on Monday, replacing Big Boy. So that's going to be a rather big event there, and they're going to share in the sponsorship with Sam's Club. Otherwise, it's essentially the same. We are hoping to block off Ethlyn Court, and we're going to have a special Mustang show. They're going to call it the Red Tangs, the Red Mustangs. So Axo Nobel is a big paint company that's based in Amsterdam. And they're one of our large sponsors, and they're going to be highlighting hopefully the Mustangs.
20th year. This is exciting.
It's the 20th year. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. All right, who wants to read that paragraph?
If you have any questions over and above, there is, the insurance is dated for May 17th, and that's because when we renew it, but it will be renewed and posted in the city for the June.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's the same.
All right, did I volunteer, I guess, by saying that?
Yeah, I think you did.
All right, I'll motion to approve the request from Eastpointe Gratiot Cruise Incorporated to conduct its 20th Annual Classic Car Cruise on Saturday, June 16th, 2018, from 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. and designate the inside lane on both northbound and southbound Gratiot Avenue for cruise participants only from Chesterfield to Springer, subject to the following conditions. 1, the organization must cooperate with the city clerk's office to ensure that all vendors are properly and quickly licensed. 2, the organization must provide general liability and liquor liability insurance certificates naming the city of Eastpointe as additional insured and execute a hold harmless agreement with the city. 3, the organization must provide a waste removal plan, city or cruise volunteers. And 4, the organization must comply with all fire codes.
Support. Drink some water. You can drink some water now.
Support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
I guess I have to abstain.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
And Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Item H is the adoption of Resolution 1849. This is the vacation of Boulder Street right away from north line of 8 Mile to Stricker Avenue.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 1849 to vacate the Boulder Street right-of-way from north line of 8 Mile Road to Stricker Avenue in accordance with the codified ordinances of the City of Eastpointe, Section 38-28, street and alley vacations, and schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, March 6th.
Do we have support?
Sure, support. And then just real quick, isn't it already vacated? I think the part I don't know if I'm beating a dead horse by asking this because I thought we've discussed this already, but it seems like it's already, isn't the 1995 saying we vacated? Why do we need to do it again?
It's saying it's closed.
Oh, it's saying it's closed and not so it's like a technicality. So
I wouldn't call it a technicality, except in layperson's term, there's a significant difference, but it's only closed, which if you pass the motion right now, we could open it tomorrow morning. Once we vacate it, we lose all control of it, and it reverts to the adjoining property owners.
okay.
So
That makes a lot more sense.
It's a lot more, yes, it's significantly different. It just sounds the same as a layperson.
Okay. Appreciate that.
All right, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. Item I is the adoption of Resolution 1850, authorizing the deficit elimination plan for the street lighting fund. And I believe that Mr. Blum just basically explained this. Do we have a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 1850, authorizing the deficit elimination plan for the street lighting fund.
Support.
Move with support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico.
Yes.
Item K is discussion on the Memorial Day Parade. I put this on to inform all of you.
Miss J.
One more, one before that.
Oops, sorry about that.
There's so many, so I can understand.
We're almost there, we're almost there.
We almost didn't say anything because we're like, oh, one less thing to talk about.
Go to M.
All right. We just need to receive and file the project summary report for the City Hall parking lot.
So moved.
Support.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Item K, discussion on Memorial Day Parade. We briefly had a meeting. I think I shared with all of you the Knights of Columbus raised a great deal of money for their projects that essentially work with personality, I can't remember the legal title, but with mentally challenged people. And so that's their big focus. So previous to last year, they raised a great deal of their money by asking for donations for Tootsie Rolls on Palm Sunday. And they did that in the local streets. So you know that we curtailed that activity because there was a state law change, and then we matched it with a city ordinance. So that prohibited people from going out in the street and asking for donations. Well, there was a state law change, but it excluded the Knights of Columbus. So it excluded, the Knights of Columbus are a 501c8, not 3. And so the legislature did not mention 501c8, they just mentioned 501c3s when they said that they would allow a change. So until that's changed, and it's apparently locked in between some committee meeting in the Senate and the House as well, and then it would need the governor's signature, then we probably can't change our ordinance because the ordinance is reflection of state law. It doesn't look like it's going to be done by February 28th, which is the deadline that the KSC gave me. So we had a meeting the other day with our Memorial Day committee, and the Knights of Columbus are still very willing to work with us and provide the management for the parade, and if we have to raise some extra funding, they're willing to do it, but they need those funds for their activities if they can't excuse me, I gotta be sure I get this word, if they can't raise funding by getting donations for their Tootsie Rolls. So the bottom line is we have a Memorial Day Parade committee of the veterans, the city, schools, the Knights, the Military Museum, and some other assistances. Oddfellows is the other big assistance. They're all willing to work together to do the parade, but we have to look at the finance. Apparently, the city charge last year was about $5,500, right about that. So there was also a charge because of the permit application, which is $75, and I believe those are the only city charges. So we had a discussion, I had a discussion with Randy Blum and with discussing the amount of money and what did we do before we decided back in 2008 or 9 that city couldn't afford to finance the charges for the parade. But this is a really big city event, and the charges would come to us for about $5,500, $6,000. But we think that this is a big city event, And maybe this is something that we could consider waiving the charge. It's only involves DPW and the police department. Correct?
That might be something to consider. I mean, I'm fine with considering that. Do we have a fund we would charge against for anything like that, or would just come straight out of general?
Yeah, it would come out of general fund, yeah.
Okay. I know we have that 200K about coming back from the, not Parks and Recs, rare. Maybe we can talk about starting to use money to do community stuff like that, or,
So
just as a side note to
So
that kind of.
the charges that still would be assumed by the committee, various parts in the committee, would still be to have the community picnic, the expenses for the gazebo and things like that. So
You're just thinking about like the personnel that we provide.
just the personnel that we provide for the parks.
I have to look more into it. I didn't even know they had a committee. I don't know if you reached out and let me know that it was a committee.
There can only be 2 people from the city on that committee meeting, and
Okay.
Sarah and I have been on that, so that's why.
It's the first time I heard about it, so
I didn't
I have to, I didn't know about it either. So I would have to get more information, so.
Okay. Well, we have a meeting, the next meeting is on February 17th, is a Saturday morning.
Not that I'm signing up to do it or anything, but I bet people would be willing to donate in the community too to have a Memorial Day parade. So I don't know what that if we wanted to do one too.
Actually, when we did have a fundraiser over at Cloverleaf last year, we made $75.
Well, I don't recommend putting in a lot of time to raise that, but
So we did a fundraiser over at Donna's, and we raised $300. So you can spend a lot of time doing a lot of fundraisers, and it still takes a lot to get up to $5,500.
I mean,
Right.
their biggest fundraiser was obviously the Tigers tickets fundraiser.
Okay, that's the one.
But we need someone to front the money for the tickets, beforehand, and take that risk, and whether or not you're going to sell enough to even get your money back. So I guess that was their biggest fundraiser towards the parade.
So, and that has a time limitation on it because you want to have the season tickets ready for the opening day. And so that becomes a real problem. So, and they said that probably they wouldn't be able to sell as many tickets this year, so they're looking to sell, maybe to raffle off Lions tickets. So they're still looking to do something related to that.
To do some fundraising to help towards the.
But we just have to realize that the Knights of Columbus are putting in all this effort. We're helping them raise the funds, but
Right.
still, they have their charities that they normally support as well, so.
Right.
I know that the parade doesn't take place entirely in the downtown district, but can the DDA pitch in for something like that?
Does it take place in any of the
The
DDA?
DDA treasurer is not really.
City Hall's part of the DDA.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
It ends right there.
So a minute of it.
Well, we're helping them get the money. Can we do a combined fundraiser with them?
Well, I mean, in the past, when we did the Lions tickets, Suzanne and I, we did help try selling the tickets for sure. I mean,
Oh, yeah, we
were
sold,
out there.
between the 2 of us, we sold 100 tickets, but.
Right, yeah.
And actually, I footed a great deal of bills because usually, when you have council.
We did all the printing
Yeah,
and all those expenses.
But everybody pitched in to deliver and everything, so, the bottom line is, it takes a city to put together with something like this, and this is a really big event in our city, one of the biggest events outside of Santa Claus.
Right. I was just saying if someone had a good idea. That's why I said I wasn't signing up, but if we did,
You're gonna-
we
You're
could.
gonna sign up to have a fundraiser that, just put that right down, Cardi. is gonna put that.
Cardi's in the fun.
Y'all
I didn't hear
heard?
motion. I'm set.
All right, so I just wanted to discuss that, and I will be back. We'll have another meeting in February, but we need to think seriously
Yeah.
about this, I think. Okay, MML Capital Conference is the other one. I think you've all got the information from MML. The Capital Conference is in March
Can I mention one thing real quick about the date for that? We should have, I meant to mention it earlier, we should change our city council meeting. We would have a council. We would have a Tuesday council meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, I know all about that.
So
I
we need to
think we did that last year, didn't we? Moved it, I think. We didn't talk about it when we
we
did
moved
the
it to the following week.
And not that Rich probably was minding missing a meeting, because I think you were going to be in DC that week, but he'll be out of town. Sorry. No, huh?
Someone would be here for our office.
So,
Well, if we're going to be changing the date, then we need to plan on changing the date. But the first thing was to see who was planning on attending.
yeah, I already registered.
You already registered?
Yep.
So are you registering with the city council funding?
I just paid for it. Yeah, I think you had in here somewhere that we just have a few
We
hundred
have
bucks left.
$614 and the registration is $220?
Yeah, I
per
think it was,
person?
yeah, it was 220, I think.
Yeah, I told Linda I planned on going. I don't know if she's booked anything yet, or if
Well,
we need to
wanted-
do an
we wanted
amendment
to
first.
see who
or
was going
something.
because we don't have any money.
So.
I am not able to attend.
You're not going?
Yeah, I wanted to try to go, because I've never been, so.
But you've been to 2 other meetings.
I just been to.
You did to the grant class,
I went to the grant class.
which was $600.
Yeah, it was.
And then the other one was the MML class.
I didn't get to make that one.
That you
'cause
didn't make.
They didn't send that to me as to confirm the class, like they did the grant class or anything like that. So when I don't get a confirmation, let me know it was paid for or I'm supposed to go. I don't know if I'm supposed to go or not. So they didn't do that. Maybe it was a mistake on them, so. Have you been to this before?
We go every year.
Okay. So you guys been a couple of
Yeah,
times,
this
so.
is really good.
This is
I'd highly
almost
recommend
mandatory for council people to attend, I think.
I think we've been pretty good about going because, you know, it normally has some pretty good updates on what's going on at the state,
Yeah,
so.
a lot of networking, too.
Okay.
Would this be our last training thing? Should we just split it evenly or something?
Well, it'll be the last training thing within
The fiscal
this budget. Because the convention comes in the fall, and the convention is going to be in Grand Rapids this year, so it's easier to get to than going up to.
Well, if everyone wants to do that, why don't we just split it? If 3 people go, split it 3 ways, split it 4 ways. or whatever.
614 4 ways.
Yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
it's
Four of you guys.
$150 for 4 people, and we just pay the rest if we want out of our own pocket, if 4 people want to go. Since you go every year, Mayor, you want to go again? You can.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's enough money for you if you pay the extra $50.
Pardon me?
I said it's enough money for you if everybody pay $50. It's 150 times 4.
220 to go.
It's
you said?
it's 220. I thought you said 200.
We could also make it an amendment to the education fund.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's where we were going with it.
Well, that's
Oh, okay.
that's my
Discussion.
thought,
I was
is
going in a
Oh,
different-
okay.
I was
because we
like,
only
okay.
have this amount of money, and it's a
I
very.
did, but then I can give my receipt and get.
Um,
there's not usually
Okay.
pay and don't turn in a receipt.
In terms of the, you know, if we want to just do it so we pay for like registration and lodging or something like that.
I think if the city pays for registration for $220 for whoever wants to go, and then hotel lodging is going to have to be out of your pocket.
That's fine with me too, however everyone wants to do it. I mean, I want council members to feel encouraged to go because I think it's actually very valuable, so.
I think it's invaluable, and it's really important.
Yep. Don't gotta
So
convince me.
you can go up on you can drive up on a Wednesday morning, but it's very hard to go to the events all day long and then come back that night. So it might mean that you have to get lodging for one night. Okay?
Joe, were they able to move that $100 for that ML class that I missed?
No.
Towards
They,
it?
apparently, according to the assistant city manager, they were not
wasn't.
willing to do that, unfortunately. It's
Okay.
disappointing.
Yeah, I wonder why they
It's disappointing.
didn't send me a confirmation.
Not
All
how you-
right, so get your registrations in through Linda, because we need to do it soon. You've already registered, and then you just get reimbursed from Linda for it.
Do that, sure.
So, Randy, do we have like an amendment coming down the pike anyway with?
Yeah, I'm hoping to have one at the next council meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Just add that in, right?
And it might be in the next budget that we need to increase our council budget again one more time. And it wouldn't cost us as much. MML increased the rate of this. This used to be just about 125, I think, and it's, but it was increased this year. Okay. Last item, DPW director vacancy.
Yeah, I asked Joe to put this on the agenda because he had expressed some concerns about moving forward with the hiring process. My position is I have the same position I did a couple months ago. I think we had kind of a back and forth with administration because I wanted it done immediately, and it took time to go through civil service and all that. But administration's been on top of this, and I feel like we're close to the finish line. So I just want them to finish and get that director hired.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Kleinfeld. I assumed when we put Joe in the position of taking over as the acting city manager that he would be responsible for filling this position. I still feel like he should still fill it.
I agree.
That's fine.
Sounds me.
We'll restart the process tomorrow.
I think you mean continue. Restart sounds scary.
Can you tell me, as long as we're talking
Oh, I thought
about
that
this,
was a joke.
what was the result of the civil service meeting yesterday?
The civil service, excuse me, the civil service voted 3-0 to approve our process of going back out without the requirement for a written test and just doing it by oral examination. And so we'll be out in the papers that we advertised last time, which I believe was the Detroit News/Free Press, the Macomb Daily, the East Sider, the Michigan Chronicle. We're going to follow the exact same steps and just change the advertisement slightly to show that no written exam.
We are restarting.
Wait, for director?
Yes.
We have to restart it. Now we had 2 people. Did they not pass the?
They did not
They
pass the
did not pass
examination.
the test, so yes, we are restarting.
We had 4 people who confirmed they would take the test. 1 backed out about 2, 3, 4 days beforehand. 1 didn't show on the examination day, and 2 people showed that confirmed, and they did not pass the examination. That happened as of it was a week ago Friday. We got the results back last week.
Well, I think I know another area we should increase our training budget.
We'll have to bring them
I'll
on.
look for that grant.
We'll have to bring them on board first.
Okay, payroll and bills.
Madam Mayor, I will make a motion to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $3,382,401.11.
Support.
Move support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes. Thought you forgot me.
No,
All right,
I
let's-
just didn't hear her say yes.
Because I'm getting shorter. All right, we'll start the hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard?
Walter Kubiak, Eastpointe resident. Mayor and council, I want to apologize for going off on you before. Let me explain what happened. After the last meeting, I talked to Joe, and I asked him to get me the number to MDOT. He contacted Steve, and Steve gave it to him, and he forwarded it to me. So I called him, and I had him explain that whole project. When he got to the right-hand turn lane, I said, now what do you want to do with that? He said, we're going to eliminate it. He said, we're going to pull a curb right out to the right-through lane. I said, why would you do that? And he says, well, the city wants to protect pedestrians crossing Gratiot. So at that point, I went over and got the police reports. And there was never a pedestrian hit over there. So why would you spend that money and change the traffic pattern for no reason at all? So then I talked to Joe about doing something about that, and he says, well, Randy and I can't do anything. He says, mayor and council has to change the project. So I said, fine. Well, I was going to get back with Spiro, and what happened is I got sick, and I had a couple of doctor's appointments, so finally I called him Friday. And I apologized for not getting back to him sooner, And I says, I'm going to go up in front of council Tuesday and try and talk him into dumping that part of the project. And initially, he told me that if you did, he could pull it out. So he says, well, don't bother. He says, Joe called me and said, go ahead, the project's a done deal. He lied to me and he lied to you, and he told me a falsehood, that you said it was a done deal. And now we find out it's not. I don't like people that lie to me, okay, especially something that important. So that's why when I walked up here, I was ready for bear. Please do not touch that right turn lane. Every major intersection all the way to 16 Mile has a separate right turn lane. And to take that away, you change the traffic pattern, and you're going to make it dangerous, because people now are going to have to make a right-hand turn from a through lane, and you can already see what's going to happen. So I want to thank you for tabling this, and really look at this before you make a final decision. And I'm on board with the 2 left turn lanes. I'm on board with the project for 9. I think that's, both of that, they're good ideas. But getting rid of that right turn lane, not so much. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Did you want to say something? No. All right, hearing in the public is closed. Move to mayor and council reports. We'll start with Ms. Owens tonight.
I want to say last week, some of you council members, because I know a lot of you work during the day, I was able to go to a drug coalition that we're starting in Eastpointe at the old schoolhouse. So it was good to see the superintendent, the schools, the chief was there, the police department, and a lot of other communities was there talking about how to go against drugs in the community. And I thought of actually having a teen summit. If not this year, probably next year, because I know back in the day we used to do a lot of say no to drugs, say yes to life, and have something for the teens to make it fun, and not like I'm telling you no, but actually let's have fun and say no. And so doing it at probably like at Memorial Park or something like that. So that's just some ideas that we were talking about. I also thinking about also doing crafts with the council, doing that with the seniors. Probably like once a month at the Roseville Recreation Department, just up there doing the craft with the seniors, getting to know them more, the past of Eastpointe, and seeing some of the old things that used to be here and learning some things about them. They are a major part of the city. They know a lot. They have a lot of wisdom, and also see if they want to volunteer. A lot of them want to volunteer, and having that relationship with the council and what's going on, I think that's going to be really effective. I'm also going to have coffee and council at Cloverleaf. That will start probably sometime in April, once a month as well, every Monday. So the residents can, if they want to talk to me about things, of course I will relay it to the public, whatever. But people want to volunteer or do something more with the community, they can have that time personally with me to talk to me and see what some of the things they can do. And I can also see what skills that they have that they can use, to help the community. And so, so that'd be crafts with the council, coffee with the council, and like I said, I'm also helping with the Drug Coalition in Eastpointe. And I also went and visited Mr. DeMonico's beautification, and he's doing an awesome job. And a lady, Lynn, she told me that she had emailed me, and we thought about starting a beautification juniors and having the kids actually, do some crafts and also learn about planning and doing some planning around the city and, just making it fun for them. And so just to add more work to your, to that. And also, as a reminder, February is Black History Month. So if you don't know your Black history, go read something about it. Also, my birthday is in February, so that's also good. Just want to put that out there. So that's pretty much it.
Mr. DeMonico.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Well, I guess I'll start with the landscape awards then. I think that'd be appropriate. This Thursday, if you're available, 7 o'clock at City Hall here. I was actually going to call it, we'll call it Eastpointe's Olympics. Since the Olympics are this week, we'll give out gold medals to our, we're not actually giving out gold medals, but I'm just going to call it that right now, to our residents that kept up their property and, you know, make Eastpointe look amazing all year. We'll give that out as we do every year. So again, Thursday, 7 o'clock, come up here. You can see Lynn, Monique, and everyone hopefully there. And also, I thought it was great. We had our joint school board city council meeting again, as we've been doing since I've been on the city council. And I thought especially one project that we talked about that was good was upgrading Memorial Park. The school board is very interested in that. So if anyone out in the public has any ideas, let us know. The football coach is going to send us some ideas, and hopefully we can consider those soon. And then I also went to a heroin and opioid town hall again. I went to one in Fraser probably like a year ago. I happened to run into Acting Director Kaiser there. I didn't even know he was going to be there, so we chit-chatted a little bit while the event was going on, but and talked about another thing that we talked about with the school board was bringing the DARE program back. But after talking with him, there might be maybe other options that are also good idea, because apparently the DARE program has no Michigan trainings anymore, so we'd have to like train out of state for DARE. So Families Against Narcotics, FAN, it's a group out of Fraser, does similar things, goes into the high school. I'd like to at least explore a couple ideas, but I also don't mind, since the heroin and opioid epidemic's so huge, and anything we can do to help would be good. So even if we need to spend money, I think that would be a good thing for the city to do. And then also, I think Walt in the hearing of the public mentioned it for a second. We talked about 9 Mile at the Planning Commission meeting. I was really excited to hear what the Planning Commission was talking about, trying to improve 9 Mile for the business climate, maybe even, you know, bike lanes or a road diet, that kind of thing. It was good to hear that. And still, if anyone in the public has any ideas, we still have the master plan draft out there, so please send your comments to us. And then that's it. I think I know Suzanne, you'll be talking about the steak and shrimp. I'll see you there then on Friday.
Mm-hmm. And I saw from tickets that Mrs. Lucido is also going.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Kleinfeld.
I don't have anything to report.
No. Mrs. Lucido.
I just want to hope everyone makes it out on Thursday for the Beautification Awards. It's a great event. Really, these homes are amazing. These people show such great pride in their homes. It's really nice just to see the pictures. You might be able to steal some ideas. It's a nice time. You get to meet some of your neighbors, you know, and from your neighborhood. Also, yeah, I will see everyone on Friday at the Steak and Shrimp at the Lions Club. I'm excited. I have never gone before. I heard it's a great event, so I'm also looking forward to that. And that's all I have for this evening.
All I can say is bring a big appetite. It's a really a great event. I have a couple things. The coalition, I set it all up, set the meeting up. I've been working with it for almost 9 years.
Oh, wow.
But however, the Department of Justice decided that my deposition had to be at that time, and they wouldn't change it. And we got halfway through my deposition, and they said, "Oh, now you can go to your meeting."
Oh,
And I
wow.
said, "This afternoon, we'll be done, you can go to your meeting." And I said, "My meeting is right now." And I was a little bit upset because it's not very often that we get a congressman to come to one of our meetings,
Yeah,
and Levin
he
was there.
Yeah.
And, but the following day, Senator Stabenow came to a PACE meeting, which was over at the Royal Popcorn, which was that's such a great little business and doing so well. And what was so exciting was she came and she wanted to talk about the opioid crisis. So State Representative Hertel was there, as well as everybody was making the rounds that day between that and Sawyer's installation as president of the college. But she was addressing the opioid epidemic and talking about the things that they're doing on a federal level. And the big thing was, if we change it to an emergency level, then you can get federal funding, but as it is now, it's really kind of hold back. But we did talk to her. We've had permanent disposal sites for prescription drugs in Eastpointe now for quite some time. Kaiser was there, and he talked about the container that they have, which is a new updated container. And then the Lions are collecting the prescription bottles, the old bottles, and I don't know what, they're sending them to someplace in Africa. But one of the things that we've done through PACE and through CARE is to set up an educational community forum that's called the Addressing the Opioid Epidemic. It's going to be in Eastpointe, so mark your days, March 22nd at 7 p.m. at Emmanuel Methodist Church. And this is significant. Kaiser presented the information that said we've had 17 deaths. 17 deaths
That's what he told me
this
at that
year
event, too,
in
yeah.
Eastpointe in 2017. But we've rescued something like, over 100 with Narcan.
Yeah.
But Stabno was talking about the price of Narcan and how it's increasing dramatically. And the controls that she's putting on it, or trying to get on it to keep the prices low so that we can do it. But Kaiser was telling me tonight that they reversed an overdose of a heroin overdose in Eastpointe tonight. So it's every single day we're doing something with it.
What time's that event starting?
This meeting is going to be at 7 p.m. at Methodist Church.
Thank you.
It says in 2016, Macomb County lost 202 people as a result of the epidemic, and 64,000 people died throughout the U.S. So the crisis is really touching a lot of lives, and it's really a big impact. The Lions Steak and Shrimp is cocktails at 6, dinners at 7. Ticket donation is $35. It's always a fun night. Let me tell you, you will walk out so fat. And I just wanted to mention the Military Museum has a book sale again this weekend. And I went last week because of the Memorial Day parade. They have a new display. If you've never seen their display, it's in the back room, and it's the Argus. So Argus was a camera that was made in Ann Arbor. And you probably, maybe you know a little bit more about it. It was made during the 40s, but it had a lot of opticals that were also made with it. And so this display that's at the Military Museum has all these opticals that were made by Argus in Ann Arbor for use during the war. So it's really pretty fascinating. You know, if you've been to the Military Museum, you've seen it, but this is a traveling display, and it's only going to be here until March. So I urge everybody to try and get to that. All right, that's all I have for tonight. So we'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to go into closed session for attorney-client privilege communication, for a legal opinion, and for pending litigation with the Department of Justice.
Support.
Move support. How about we meet there at 10?
Sure.
Take a bathroom break?
Yeah.
We've only been at it for 4 hours.
Did we vote on that?
Aye.
I was
Aye.
waiting to be asked, actually, but I should call the roll. Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley? Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.